All right. Peace and power, family. Hope everybody is doing well today. You made it this far to be on live with your boy, so we're going to definitely get it in. As you know, a whole lot's been going on. If you ain't been keeping up with the whole Kyrie and Kanye situation, there's plenty of videos on our channel. Go check it out to see what's really been going on. But for everybody who's been paying attention, you already know tonight this conversation is the conversation we all need to have. And we're here on True Flicks Network, the way of YAH, and we're going to bring that. I got my comrade, my brother in the Most High, the mighty Hebrew. He's going to be in the building along with Rabbi Harry Rozenberg. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to get it in and have this conversation. Until then, I'm getting ready to play one of the songs by the mighty Hebrew. And after that, none other than yours truly.
2022. Journey to the dark side of the moon. The mighty Hebrew. Contar. Central. Box with y'all. Use your own reach. Eating by beast. King up the street heartbeat. Sees this journey darkness. The moon falls. Mind trapped like Saul. Vanguard of Elohim. The sin that's where Marla beans die like the enemy. Cryptic knowledge, get lost in translation. Sensation, awake the pioneer that was hated by your Gentile apes. Freeze pie me, execute the use fate. Hunsu Quan, star on track like the Wrath of Khan. Insane as the membrane on hill, smoking cypress. Vision from the iris of M-I-N-D. See titans falling as prophecy bomb. Compton, Philly up the Harlem. Israel, I heard the calling of our forefathers into Tanakh. From Stinson, I'm Sion, speaking sins all. Sins of our Hebrew ancestors saw since the fall from the all. 2/3 robotic like Nemesis. 2/3 your lives is moving swift. 2/3 dying for wickedness. 2/3 rise and repent quick. 2/3 robotic like Nemesis. 2/3 your lives is moving swift. 2/3 dying for wickedness. 2/3 rise and repent quick. Pioneer fight, priest by May. Kwam Yah uphold the way. Allah Hayam vacate child's play. My mind sprays satanic hatred. We live now for the ancients. Resurrect, trick of assassination. My appel be sacred. Spiked up, wearing the turban in the urban. Teaching on street corners with warriors. Reading Torah to the laws, filling bites of serpents. My people hurting from the curses. Deuteronomy 28, 68 codes. It's verses and scrolls. Blackness eat them, lurking for control. Israelites dark, Solomon's curtains. We buy words, be the chosen. Devil speak when you spoken. Prince Maltazar Yam, Yasha Allah. Crushing you nations, idle powers into powder. Bodies under dead flowers, the way of a samurai. Never live as cowards, we uphold honor. For Yah Abanawa, our sovereign power. Our sire over Aratazar. Lion king of Zion, conquer the liar. Spit to knock fire, to burn Esau into stumble. Truth they fumble, World War III, Royal Rumble. Soundless the crafty mumble, to us they bow their heads humble. Gadites got the beast running. Back to dungeons of London to watch jackals feast on their carcass, living dormant and clips up the rocks, mountain climb. They fell from Yah as savages, dirty, nasty, river rat bastards. They misplay Queen's dragon, fucking faggots. I expose Vatican's Pope Benedict sucking dick. This is the real shit that Jesuits hear. If you don't wanna hear it, close your ears. Mosquito is near, beware. Soon your faces will melt from your tendons by a nuclear nemesis. Born in new spirits, I do me us. Rulership is finished. Yah Quabs just beginning. The surface breaking through iron meeting. Fifth deadly venom, toe shatter you sinners. War is our vengeance to stop the sickness and rise to healing. If Yah's he grandchildren, 2/3 robotic like Nemesis. 2/3 robotic like Nemesis. 2/3 your lives is moving swift. 2/3 dying for wickedness. 2/3 rise and repent quick. 2/3 robotic like Nemesis. 2/3 your lives is moving swift. 2/3 dying for wickedness. 2/3 rise and repent quick. Shalom Bahashim Yahweh Hakovish Yisrael Wa Shema Yisrael Yahweh Eloheinu Yahweh Ran. Journey to the dark side of the moon. 2022. is the mighty Hebrew, live and direct. Tanzania, East Africa, all the way from Philly. Hunting Park in the building. We be the Elohim. We got 311 trillion, 40 billion year history. From the dimension of Mebedu, incarnated 5.5 million BCE, by the way of the Ramahos, post-Diluvian, as the children of Israel, also known as the Hebrew Israelite sovereign nation. Selah.
Peace, shalom, chat. Everybody in the building, man. Once again, welcome to Truthless Network. This is the way of YAH. Today, sorry about that, family. So listen, real quick, y'all, my apologies. Had a little technical difficulties in the background. But again, y'all, I appreciate y'all for coming here to be on the channel. You know what I mean? Today we're going to get it in with the brother, the mighty Hebrew. We got Rabbi Harry Rozenberg is going to be here today. And again, you know, it's a conversation that we all need to talk about, which is who are those people over in Africa that migrated, that we see on many of these charts that we want to reference as the Negroes, the African-American here in America that applies to Israel. And so today we're going to dig into that a little bit. I'm gonna play one more song. Matter of fact, let me tell you, because the mighty Hebrew in the building. How you feeling, mighty? You okay? You ready to go or no?
Hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, hallelujah, hallelujah. Giving all praise and honor to Yahweh, the supreme intellect of our forefathers. Abraham, Scott, and Yaakov. What's going on, Lord Mikael?
Peace, peace, shalom. How you feeling?
I'm told. We're gonna have if I'm not mistaken, the Rabbi may be already ready. He was running a little late, but he should be in the back by now. And Dr. Bain Zedek is coming on as well. Okay.
All right, cool. So talk to me. So what you want to do? Because, you know, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you run the show, bro.
Is the Rabbi here now?
Not yet.
Okay, because he said he's running a little late. So let's play another song real quick. And from there, after that, then we can start the presentation.
All right,
let's play I
already got one queued up.
Oh, you already got one queued up. Hallelujah. Let's do it. Yo is coming for the chosen. Y'all's people stay focused, taking over, breaking curses, Torah verses, minds open, supernova, 1/3 global. The new age yo is coming for the chosen. Y'all's people stay focused, taking over, breaking curses, Torah verses, mind open, supernova, 1/3 global. China would jack the Russians. Your mind's puzzled in destruction, deconstruction, or will becoming committee 300. Georgia, well, book is broken. Focus on Persia. The scroller Daniel opens, giving vision, beast image, selling in slave ships with Israelites, yoked in iron, dying daughters of Zion, crying in pits. Words 28:36. The cryptic hit and refill. Yah's wisdom, the dead live. What a feeling. Yasha Allah now risen from invading nations, ruling in hatred, parading our labor as slaves from the soup. Possessed with Masonic voodoo, overseen by Juju. Get it? The Jewish man fuck the Fuju. We the Hebrews from the tribe of Judah. Rest ben Ami, Rabbi Nu, Adonai Nu. Yishalam the Dr. Shaliach for me. When you read me, decree 720, cipher complete. Exodus 720, incarnate stabs, giving omens, ruling like Joseph. Hyksos over the Hyksos with a death potion. Scoping Harvard like Horus. Frankenstein, 12 tribes like Boris. We Optagon, fight Chuck Norris. Captivity we sell over tosses. Dry bones resurrect from our lost coffins. Lazarus we walk market. Adapt, horse and fame, calling Yahweh's name. Reclaim sovereign reign over middle terrain. Stains of black rain lay on the brain to 2/3 get wasted by Edom's caveman. Tartarian state where freedom fighters get placed. For Norman Bait, cellmate, drowning in crystal lake like Jason. Don't change the station, the truth face it. The earth is shaking as I'm quaking, cracking pavements. No one's safe from fate. Bones break, shaking, get bait. My club of Rome's Olympian racists and rapists against ancient sages walking the word. Abraham, Isaac, and Jake, blood in my veins. Ellie and DNA in my pioneer. From 7 root races, a bar, the savior of the sacred seed of David. Being raised in the last days for Jacob behind the western gate of Masonic rings. And Satan, the Gentiles world is fading as we wake from danger to become angels. Rearrange your face, Scarface, and Moshi, feel the rhythm from bass. The new age, yo, is coming for the chosen. Yah's people stay focused, taking over, breaking curses, Torah verses, minds open, supernova, 1/3 global. The new age, yo, is coming for the chosen. Yah's people stay focused, taking over, breaking curses, Torah verses, mind open, supernova, 1/3 global.
They make me 38 hoes when they checking for my beats. Man, I wanna find your trash, killer flow on your speeds. When I die 8 ball, Kisha wanna skip. Niggas stay on the case, let's go back to rap. I'm out of TD, show your face, put your mask off. This is not to hair cutting shit, is that stave off. Say they need me, mean the hope when they lose up. God gave me green lights and I never say stop. I'm getting close to the top, Toka Chini swears drop. Pull up when the volley motherfuckers try to cut the rope. Hardcore, I force a job, they can TV try to cop. This is not for everybody, I never scared to be so hot. But between my dream, we do more than taking action on my team. Shooting Lisha 86, life now, don't want him. Still I see these niggas pay a lot of money, quit a foot in. Stay on the case, they keep on a chase. Game of the time, never be lazy. Najenga my base, kisha na raise. Nikifika ni gold, such a good praise.
The new age, yo, is coming for the chosen. Yah's people stay focused, taking over, breaking curses, Torah verses, minds open, supernova, 1/3 global. The new age, yo, is coming for the chosen. Yah's people stay focused, taking over, breaking curses, Torah verses, mind open, supernova, 1/3 global.
It's the moment that all of you all been waiting for. We had the great mighty Hebrew, the Prince Shah, in the building today, along with the Rabbi Harry Rozenberg. I need everybody to get busy in the chat. Need everybody sharing the video, giving it a thumbs up, because it's gonna be dynamic. This is the video that everybody want to see right now, and I need you to let everybody know where we are, and that's on Truthless Network, right here on the Way of Yah. So, mighty Hebrew, without further ado, I'm gonna turn it over to you, and you can take the wheel, bro. Shalom.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. First and foremost, I give all praise and honor to Yahweh, the supreme intellect of our forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, those striving for righteousness' sake worldwide. I say unto the family, Shalom Aleichem. It's definitely an honor and a privilege to be back on Truthless Network. You know what I'm saying? The Way of Yah. It's definitely an honor, Lord Mikael. And it's definitely an honor to have Rabbi Harry Rozenberg come on. You know what I'm saying? He has a lot on his plate over in Israel. So he gave, his time to speak on the subject matter. So to give a brief synopsis, what we're going to be touching on today is the Hebrew Israelite sovereign nationalistic presence throughout Africa and how that has interconnections with so-called Negroes in the diaspora. Right now, we've been seeing this uproar. We've been seeing the anti-Semitic attack, so to say, against Nick Cannon, Professor Griff, Irvin, the Kanye West, Kodak Black, Nas. The list goes on and on and on and on. We've been hearing this. And what we want to do is bring forth understanding. one of the things that we're seeing right now is this major attack on the documentary by Ron Dalton known as From Hebrews to Negroes, or Hebrews to Negroes. And I watched the documentary myself, and as a matter of fact, I watched it at least like 6, 7 times. And through the information when I seen, there is no anti-Semitism in it. My understanding is it's bigger than that because so-called Negroes, we're Shemitic ourselves. And then you also have other people that are of this Shemitic background that's also Shemitic. That might not necessarily be, a part of the Jewish people, so to say. You might have Bedouin Arabs, you may have Fulanis, you have different people that have a Shemitic background that has what they will call an Afro-Core or Afro-Asiatic abstraction. I feel as though when we as a people want to speak out that we're Israel, Rabbi Harry Rozenberg was on Hip Hop Report with Old Guy, and he showed a consummated equation that I have to agree with. One thing we don't want to do is we don't want to blame the whole entire Jewish populace as to what is going on, because common Jewish people really don't know what's going on. But there is an inner cabal within the Jewish populace that is controlling the media, that's controlling the banking system, that's controlling the whereabouts and who's who and what within the social construct of Western liberal democracy. There's no way of getting around this, okay? And some things were brought out that might pain the Jewish people because of the atrocities that were imposed on them during the Nazi Holocaust and with so-called African Americans, so-called Negroes in the diaspora, whether we're talking about the East African slave trade or the West African slave trade. It has been documented over 350 million souls were destroyed, loss of identity, loss to history. So there's certain similarities. And what we're trying to show on this presentation that you do have Jewish rabbis. I'm not saying all, but you do have Jewish rabbis that are making connections with Israelites throughout Africa, and that they're not in denial of the Israelite presence in Africa. But first, we want to tackle what is going on right now generally, because that's where everybody's focusing on. They focusing on Irving. They focusing on From Hebrews to Negroes. It done went so far that they pushing the president of the United States to write an executive order to ban From Hebrews to Negroes from out of the United States, taking it off the bookshelves, from his books, from his documentary, and from what I'm saying and seeing, it's deeper than just the movie itself. But there's an inner cabal that wants to try to stop the rise of Israel from amongst so-called Negroes. That's how I see it. But today I'm interviewing the well-respected rabbi. He just came on. Rabbi Harry Rozenberg. What's going on, Robbie? It's been a minute. How you doing?
Shalom, Prince. It's a big honor to be here, and I give thanks to the Most High for the opportunity to have this healthy conversation with you.
Yeah, appreciate you, Rabbi.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Before we go on, Dr. Bain Zadek said that his link isn't opening. Can you shoot him a link, Lord Mikael?
Sure.
Do you have his matter of fact, I'm gonna shoot that link that you sent in my WhatsApp. Let me send that one to him and see what happens real fast. So let me just send this one to him. That's the StreamYard. If you hear me, Dr. Bain Zadek, go to your WhatsApp. Also, if you can Um, Mikael, could you send that to him if you can? Okay. Okay. I just sent the link that you sent me. I sent to him
Okay.
in his WhatsApp. So how's the family, Rabbi Rozenberg? How's the family and how's everything going on in Israel?
I appreciate you asking. We're good out here. It's beautiful weather here in Jerusalem. It's an unbelievable honor and opportunity that we get to live on the ground out here and be a part of the natural energy of the land, which charges us with spirituality. And it's just, I have so much thanks to be here right now.
Hallelujah. I just was there for a whole month for the New Jerusalem Writers Conference. I was there from like early August to mid-September. So I go to Israel every 3 months. I go every 3 months to Dimona. This time I went to Tel Aviv. I went to Tel Aviv. Oh man, Tel Aviv is off the hook. I like Tel Aviv. I do.
If
It's
you go,
very you. What'd you say, Rabbi?
I said only, 50, 60 years ago, it was a desert over there.
Yeah, I know. And you know what it also shows how very multicultural Israel is. Because when you look on TV, they give a certain image and a trajectory to people about Israel. But if you're on the ground of Israel, then you know for a fact that it's very multicultural in Israel. So let's start. Let's talk. I seen you on Hip Hop Report. I think you did a real excellent job on Hip Hop Report. I'm gonna ask you some questions. The people got some questions for you, Robbie. So I gotta give them to you. So, first thing I want to ask you is the situation that's going on right now with Kanye West and Kyrie Irving. What is your thoughts and your intake when it comes to the situation right now with this matter of these two men being labeled as anti-Semitism? How do you feel about this situation and what is your thoughts?
Well, in general, I feel optimistic about the situation. This is a situation I foresaw coming 10, 12 years ago. I started to speak about this publicly, making posts, making videos, and I was just warning the Jewish people. I said, there's going to come a time where lines are going to get drawn in the sand, and these people are going to wake up. And if we don't have some type of formal understanding and relationship how we can work together, it could get ugly and it could get turned into a division between us two. So I said it's imperative we build the bridges now and start to prepare because this great awakening is on its way. So now what's going on with Kyrie and Kanye? This is just the smell of it. This didn't even come yet. It didn't even start yet. I think this is just the awakening starting to trickle into the people. I mean, it's going on decades, if not 100, 200, 400 years since the exile, but now you see it starting to peak. And so I'm hopeful that we can turn this opportunity into a liaison and unity of forces to fight what's really evil in the world. And I feel it's part of my job as someone who has a different perspective on this to be breaking it or explaining to the Jewish people the significance of the opportunity at hand, and not to get triggered by what the media is telling you should be triggered by, but to see the spiritual reality of the situation.
That was definitely a good response, a great response. One of the parts within your response that I heard you say is that these people talking about us, I'm assuming, are waking up. And what I want to focus on is the waking up. Question: who is the people that are waking up and waking up to what?
Well, there's two things. As we spoke about in these other shows, that when someone gets lost in the exile and rejoins the house of Israel, the Jewish people, the word convert is used, but it's actually not really the word, because the Jewish people teach this person wasn't a convert. This person's soul was at Mount Sinai, got lost in the exile, and because they were at Sinai, they're naturally inclined to return back to where they came from. So it's like a puppy that gets lost. There was a movie, Homeward Bound. It gets lost on the other side of the world.
Mhm.
These dogs make it home. They sniff their way home and they found their way home. So we believe if a soul came from Israel, it will sniff its way. It'll find its way back to Israel. So it's not a random thing if someone is awakening as Israel. There's something there. There's something so big, and the fact that I was able to notice that within the community, and then even trace it back to actual Israelite presence in Western Africa where they came from. I was like, oh, that was lock, smoke, and barrel. It's not just that these people are waking up to Israel, which in its sense would have been and is so significant from the Jewish perspective. It means the soul of Israel is in those people to begin with. The fact that they have these thoughts in the first place, but secondly, that we could just simply trace back to Western Africa, these tribes keeping 8-day circumcisions and laws and traditions of Moses. That should just be a no-brainer to everyone that we have a large chunk of the exile of Israel starting to awaken in this demographic, which seems to be strategically positioned by the Most High, that all eyes on the world are on this demographic, and this demographic is influencing culture around the whole world. It's the opportunity for, in Hebrew, what we call a Kiddush Hashem, to sanctify the name of God, to give glory to God's name through this opportunity. So this is part of the things rolling through my head as this whole thing's unfolding.
Great. That's definitely a great response. And let me remind the people, I think some people have a misunderstanding of this interview. I think they was looking for a debate. If you read the poster, the flyers, this is an interview. We're in a season right now of reestablishing the awakening people, Yisrael, all over the four corners of the earth. Rabbi Harry Rozenberg is one out of quiet as is kept. Many rabbis that believe that Black people in America have a connection and a part of the Hebrew nation of Israel. So I heard you say on the Hip Hop Report that there was a hidden cabal within, the Jewish community, not the Jewish community themselves. So I want to make this clear, because the average Jewish person don't know nothing about a conspiracy. They just regular people living everyday lives, 9 to 5. But there is this cabal that you was talking about, and you said that we know them as Rockefellers, Rothschild, but these are not the real names. The oldest name I can go back to is the Olympians. Could you explain a little bit more in detail, not too much, because I understand the position that you're in. So we're going to be mindful of that. Give us a little bit of the understanding of this cabal that you see that's trying to stop the reestablishment of Israel, if you don't mind.
Yeah. First and foremost, I pray for the day to come where all the information can get safely publicly spoken without jeopardizing anyone's position in this world so far, which is unfortunately even have to speak that way. But this is a game of chess, so everyone's just got to be strategic. But what it seems like from our perspective, from the Jewish rabbinic Kabbalah transmission, this is the reality that we're facing. That when Moses left Egypt with the Israelites, there was a group of Egyptian magicians, high elite magicians from Egypt, that attached themselves to the Israelites and converted and went into the desert with them. This is referred to in the Bible as the mixed multitude, or in Hebrew as Erev Rav. And they were actually the ones, when Moses goes up on the mountain to get the Torah, they were the ones that caused the sin of the golden calf.
Go ahead, Rabbi.
Sorry about that. They were the ones that caused the sin of the golden calf, and they caused the light of Moses the first time he went up in the mountain to be shattered. Moses breaks the tablets. And we teach during that period, we actually had the light of the Garden of Eden in our heads. We were like out of the sin of Adam. We rectified the whole situation. Then this Erev, these Egyptian mixed multitude guys wearing the name Israel on them now, caused the sin of the golden calf. And we lose that light. And then all the things we have now, the 5 books of Moses and the Temple of Solomon, all these were things that were a byproduct of losing that light and having to create a mechanism of keeping the Torah in reality still in an exile mode, And so our ancestors warned us that they did it then, and they're going to do it in the future. These guys don't go away from the people of Israel. They're going to be embedded within the people of Israel until the final generation. And the final battle the Jewish people have to face is not going to be with Ishmael, it's not the Arabs, and it's not going to be with Esau, it's not going to be with Rome. it's going to be with the Erev, with the mixed multitude, who are the people within the Jewish people who wear the name Jewish on them, but attach themselves to some type of identity and allegiance to Egyptian fraternity culthood that dates back thousands of years. And in every generation, there's been this society. And you see it quickly merges between the Jewish elite and the church. This goes back to, Vatican Jesuit stuff. And so it's not nothing to do with Torah and the Jewish people. It's almost like there's within the Jewish people this energy in it. You could see how forceful and controlling it is. And, it looks like from my perspective, they played somewhat of a role, very helpful in getting the land of Israel back and resettling it and building it up. And I have a lot of gratitude for that and all the roads and highways, preparation. And maybe that's their way of, atoning for the sin of the golden calf is in the final generation, they helped build the land. Who knows? But what we do know is that Israel is not a secular identity based on a race of people. It's a spiritual light onto the nations. And until the government of Israel acts that way, we know there's something within it that's not from the pureness of what Israel's supposed to be to the world. So that's why we just got to keep our eyes open and start to say, instead of calling these people out and fighting them and making a whole march against it, I think our unity would be strong enough to make them irrelevant. We really have the power. These elite nourish themselves from us, from our activity. We're fueling it with ourselves because they were able to divide and conquer us and keep us in our little boxes working for them. But if we just linked up and made strategy between ourselves, this would happen in no time. We could take down global systems with our unity. So I think that before we even have to battle anyone, we just have to unite. We just need Shalom al Yisrael, peace on the house of Israel.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Great response. And like I said, I see the listener audience in my inbox again. For the we see what's going on right now. When people come up and fight the powers that be, they have a stronghold geopolitically and financially to destroy a person, so we say. So I'm being very careful because this man has a family. We have families, so we have to be mindful that we still dealing with factors that can be harmful. So as the Crown Prince Yosef would say, we have to be very strategic. So now I want to ask you a question. Did you get to watch the movie From Hebrews to Negroes?
Well, I didn't watch the whole movie, but I had a few years of YouTube debates with the author. So I kind of
seen that
downloaded
debate. I seen that debate.
I downloaded a lot
debate.
of what's going on in his brain from his arguments and from his ideas. So I didn't think I needed to put 3.5 hours into watching it, but from what I heard from it was that he did an amazing job displaying the Israelite reality going on in Africa today and the spiritual awakening. So it was amazing. It was inspiring and it gave people this rejuvenation. I just knew he's mixing in it a lot of homegrown thoughts that aren't so well backed up on the origins or the history of the Jewish people today, that I don't think I'd be happy to argue with or debate with anyone where he went off on that. And I think that leads to more divide and towards the agenda of our oppressors is to create division between us, and you're one and I'm nothing, I'm the other, and we don't have anything to do with each other except enemyhood. That for me is like a red flag. So I'm I love all the good Israelite stuff in it, but once you put some divide and conquer mentality in it, gonna keep people enslaved mentality, I gotta call it out and say that's not pure. It can't happen. And so I'm happy to have honest conversations if people think I'm wrong or out of line or something's off with the way I'm responding to it. But the 2,000-year history of the Jewish people and the survival of the Torah is what I think a phenomenon and a beautiful thing. And the reason you could even say Shalom Aleichem today to me is because these things were preserved. Even though the Ethiopians had them as well, the Jewish people are the ones that brought them to safety and helped them preserve their books and texts. There was a genocide Holocaust over there. So I don't know, there's a lot to say about it, but these are some of the thoughts I'm having.
I definitely appreciate your your honesty of what you've explored. I watched the whole thing. From my intake, it was definitely a powerful presentation. He did show the African Edenic origins of the original Hebrew people. I think things that we sometimes say, I don't want to say the opposite side after, as if there's two separate sides, but it all depends on one's vantage point of how they see things. Certain things that might have been said and labeled as rhetoric could also be a reaction and a response to the atrocities that has taken place. And when we study sociology and psychology, sometimes people that are being oppressed can take on nationalistic overtones. Even when you look at Zionism, it's sprung from that idea of people globally being oppressed, mainly at the time, in Germany and Russia and different areas like that. When I seen Ron Dalton make certain statements, it sounds like it's more a combative reaction because of the plight that has taken place with so-called African Americans. Now, this is a geopolitical question in oneness with this. Right now in Damona, the community that I'm a part of, we've been there since 1969. We left in 1967. We got there in 1969. Well, actually 68 when the late Nasi Keskiyahu went in. And then in 69, more started to influx by the way of Liberia through the United States. And then from there, we were welcome as quote unquote Jews. I like to use the word Israelite. That's more organic, but that's a different topic. In 1971, the law returned change from you believing in your heart that you was a Jew to now either your mother is Jewish or you have to go through conversion or so-called conversion by the way of halacha. Because of this that transpired in 1971, it trickled down to today to the point where there are people right now that's been born in the land, and we see that the local, I don't want to say the head supreme government, but the local government are trying to deport brothers and sisters that's been there since they've been born. They don't have nowhere else to go. They don't have, they were born there. So a lot of people from the outside looking in consider this as a racist agenda. When it comes to the Hebrew Israelite presence in the land, why to this day, Rabbi, do you believe that some members in the community I'm a part of haven't received citizenship yet? And why is the Israeli government still trying to deport brothers and sisters from out of the land if it's been on record and proven? And even in the Talmud, we have quotations in the Talmud that proves that we're Israelites in West Africa. Why do you think that, Rabbi?
Well, there's a few things over here. One is, I don't think the government of Israel is even remotely prepared to address this situation, because they're not looking at the people of Damona as an individual, isolated situation. They see it tied to millions and millions of people in America who share this same mentality as the humans on the ground in Damona. I don't think they have the tools or are even supposed to have the tools to know how to go about this. But I do think we're at a crossroads right now, and the government of Israel was built in a way that, with a certain amount of unity within the people of Israel, this government could be swapped overnight. It's not like American elections where you have to wait 4 years. This could be, you change the heart of the people, and in 1 or 2 weeks we can shut down the whole government and reform it and relaunch it. So I saw this as a great opportunity for Sorry about that. I saw this as a
No
great
problem.
opportunity for me not to have to find out who's racist and how to battle this government and how do we petition and lobby. I just said we got to level up. We got to go one level deeper. If we unite and have a unity within our nations across the world where we are right now, the power combined would create a political force that would be strong enough not only to steer the future of Israel but also in America as well. And this is part of the prophecies, I think, is this great awakening. So right now, instead of battling, I'm just trying to unite, because through unity we could steer the hearts of the people. And then the government of Israel is built in a way where we could be changing policy with this time next year if we were on our game, where these individuals with Damona's rights would change overnight. So I think there's like a babysitter now in the land, like, you know, the analogy, like a drunk babysitter. You know, the parents are going to come home soon and they're going to bring order to the house. So I think the future of this land will have spiritual order in it. We just have to stay humble and unite on our front and let the creator of the universe do his work, because we have to
That's
like
deep.
trust. Yeah. Wait, what were you going to say?
I, I'm glad that you said, I seen the metaphor, the babysitters of the house and the parents returning home. And if anybody listening, sometimes you have to have a listening ear, because as I said, we talk in the way we talking for geopolitical reasons. First, I want to thank you for being open-minded. That's number one. And number two, you've been sharing to the world that there are Israelites in Africa, and that the African Americans do have a deep intrinsic connection with Israel, to the point that you acknowledge that many of them are in fact descendants of the Israelites. I have to ask you a critical question, Rabbi. I have to. The transatlantic slave trade. Right now, there's a big quarrel going on throughout just social media in general. I'm not calling out no platforms, nothing, just social media. And there are documents, we're talking as historians, there are documents that are saying that there was a heavy Jewish influence when it came to the transatlantic slave trade. Whether you're talking about, you know, building ships, importing Israelites and non-Israelites, because we as Hebrew Israelites, sovereign nationals, we don't acknowledge every person that was on that slave ship were Israelites. That's make that clear. There were other nations and tribes from Africa that was on them boats that weren't necessarily Israel, but there was Israel in the mix of that. There are documents that are being presented from Jewish rabbis themselves. I'm going to, you know, themselves, you know, writing documents of the heavy participation in the transatlantic slave trade. What would you say if somebody come to you and say, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but what is these documents of the Jewish, and let me clarify it, members within the Jewish community that had their ties and hands in the transatlantic slave trade to the point it benefited them globally to where they're a major superpower today. What would your response be to that, Rabbi?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I wouldn't, you know, just to on what you started off last. The Jewish people for thousands of years always manifested wealth and power wherever they went. So it wasn't all of a sudden we got some new power out of nowhere. When we were in Spain, we got to the elite. When we were in Rome, we got to the elite. When we were in Greece, we got to the elite. Anywhere in the last 2,000 years Jews became powerful and influential, which was one of the reasons they were kicked out of those places in the first place and sent from place to place. Before we talk about the Jewish role in transatlantic slave trade, there's just a few realities I want to bring in. You know, there was lots of players in the transatlantic slave trade. There was the Arabic, you know, slave capturers in the first place, the people who weren't converting. And first of all, who were the people who weren't converting to Islam? Were probably the people of Israel who weren't going to convert. If you looked at Spain, how many people would rather take a sword or than to convert to Christianity in the 1400s during the Inquisition. So I could imagine if the Islamic slave traders are rolling through northern and western Africa saying either convert or become a slave, a lot of people become slaves. Who are the people who aren't going to convert? The people are going to become slaves, the House of Israel. So then also I looked into it, and I know John Oliver just did a documentary on this like a few nights ago. Everyone should watch it, on the monarchy of England, which he believes was the big shareholder in the transatlantic slave trade, was the royal house of England, tied to the church, and they really had the bulk of it. From what I understood, Jewish slave owners, or was maybe 2% of the whole thing was to Jewish people. But if you want to suggest behind the scenes, a few Jewish families were involved in the hierarchy and the overseeing of the whole thing, and it benefited Jewish wealth. I'm not an expert in that. I'd be interested to see if we could actually trace which families accumulated from which wealth, and if there's, those families have businesses today, if there could be reparations. But this is like probably a really uncomfortable response that I'm also going to have, because I'm not here to defend the Jewish role in the transatlantic slave trade. I think that anyone's role in it, from the church to the Arabs to the Jews that were involved, needs to be publicly spoken about and researched, of where that wealth went to today and how that wealth could benefit your community. No question. I would even love to get a little bit of some wealth from somewhere else, but I wasn't in it, so I didn't get any wealth from the Jewish money in it.
Right.
But let me ask an uncomfortable question. Now, and this could get looked at as really wrong, and I'm not saying this is how I think. I'm just throwing it out here for the sake of academia.
Absolutely.
When Joseph, he was sold into slavery by his brothers, right? And then he gets to Egypt and rises to become second in power in Egypt. And he sets up a whole trap for his brothers. They roll through. They don't know it's him. He sets up the food shortage. Next thing you know, they're in front of him in the king's palace, and they don't know it's Joseph. And he's threatening to lock up some brothers and arrest them. He's just messing with them, toying with their emotions to see if they're loyal still to him. And finally he says, "It's me, Joseph. I'm your brother. Is my father still alive?" And these brothers all cry. Why are they crying? They're terrified. They're like, "Oh, snap. We sold him into slavery. Now he's in power. What do you think he's going to do to us now?" And they got terrified. What was Joseph's response to them? He said, No. It's all good. Don't you see? This is from God. This is from the Most High that I ended up here. This isn't between me and you. This is between us and the Most High. So I think the community has to choose. If you believe you fulfilled biblical prophecy by coming on those ships, and it was from the Most High, you shouldn't have to be angry at anyone involved in it. You have to say, this is where we were brought for a great reason. Let's play our role. Because the vibration of anger and resentment and feeling wronged and feeling like it creates a low level energy where someone can't spiritually activate himself. So I think there has to be like a rebirth, like a reset, to say, hey, this is where we find ourselves now. How do we get out of this situation? And I do think reparations could or could not be part of it, but that shouldn't mean, looking to see if a guy like me should be invalidated as a spiritual being because I had some distant, Jewish people, I don't know what allegiance they did or didn't have to the Torah at the time, supporting industry that should be illegal and punishable.
That was definitely a great response, because if we do look at Torah Constitution along with the Tanakh, at the end of the day, Israel as a nation was given the law, statutes, and commandments. And one of the things that we were told, if we were to hearken unto the voice of Yahweh, this would transpire. So in essence, that's what Kanye West meant when he said we brought ourselves into slavery. A lot of people ran with his statement and looked at it in a negative way, where he was more or less speaking prophetically when he made that statement. Very similar to what you're saying, Rabbi. But I also want to tackle a critical question. I seen in one of your presentations in the past when you were speaking about the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh and the biracial development of these two tribes through the Hamitic Chemedians or Egyptians and through Joseph. Today, we have a lot of scientific evidence saying that the true Shemitic people, or I'll just say Shemitic people in general, I really don't like to use the word Semitic. I know it's from the Greek, because they didn't have an SH sound in the Greek language. So I like to use Shemitic. From your research, and it's not to box you in or anything, but we just want to know through your research, was the original Shemitic people, for the lack of the word, because we know at that time this word didn't exist, phenotypically, would they be considered an African people or Afro-Asiatic people?
Yeah,
Put it
those
like that.
words, Afro.
The first Shemitic people.
Yeah, those words didn't even really exist back then, but we do know that Israel's on the
Right.
African tectonic plates. So Israel's literally.
Say that one more time. Hold on. Stop. Say that one more time about Israel being geographically where, and continue on. Say that again.
Yeah, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is information I was under the impression that Israel is part of the African tectonic plates, which means it's an extension of the continent of Africa.
Okay. Absolutely.
But this is all the best I have is the teaching that we taught 2,000 years ago by one of the descendants of the house of David named Judah the Prince. And Judah the
I'm familiar.
Prince, he wrote down, and I speak about this very often, I post about it. He just said the children of Israel were not white and they were not black, but they were boxwood. And this is what he says. And then the teaching goes on to teach the laws of the skin affliction of the Israelite. And the two examples it gives of how a skin affliction could look on a man, and keep in mind this is 2,000 years ago, it gives two examples. It gives the example of what the skin affliction would look like on an Ethiopian Israelite and what the skin affliction would look like on a German Israelite. Now this is 2,000 years ago. Keep in mind that this teaching was born by a descendant of the house of King David, Judah the Prince, Yehuda Hanasi. And so there must have been a transition, from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, whatever color they were probably all three the same color, where from 12 sons having different wives, and then from some from different nations, and then having those sons who are taking on wives from different nations, and so on and so forth. And then even as far as Moses taking on the daughter of a Midianite priest, and Ruth the Moabite gives birth to King David, and King Solomon's 1,000 wives. You have to wonder at what point around 3,000 years ago the people of Israel looked like Queens, New York, and were made up of a lot of colors. That's just had to have been inevitable. And for someone not to use their foresight or imagination to see how that could have unfolded within that 300 to 400 year period of intermarrying all these nations, and then let alone the Greeks who started, merging in around 300 before the Common Era. That was already after the Jews came home from Babylon, where there was a mass conversion from Ethiopia to India, according to the Book of Esther. The genetic mix of the people of Israel had to have been so stirred up at that time already that I couldn't imagine how we can use color now to try to reverse engineer who the original ones were, because that's not what the Tanakh or the prophecy is about. It's about everyone uniting from all the different ones, not people separating because of a construct taught to us by hateful people, by the Europeans who taught us race and color.
Okay. The reason why I bring this up, because in the movie From Hebrews to Negroes, I think Ron Dalton made some very excellent key critical points going back to Adam, however one wants to take, if he was a literal man or was it a construct of an idea, that's neither here or there. But he went into Noah and the sons of Noah, and he was showing, phenotypically that they were of an African Edenic abstraction. And as years develop, even as you're telling us, and where it has been proven historically that there were certain mixtures, and the genetics or the phenol structures started to vary based on wherever Israel was at, and them being the minority and mixing with the majority, they started to look like them surrounding people. We see this even with the Bani Israel in India. We see it also with Manasseh, remnants of Manasseh in southern China and different parts of that areas. From the research, we're seeing you know, these Shemitic people haven't, as you would say, Africa be it or Israel be it on the African tectonic plate, which is true, that they would come from an African Edenic source. Why do you think when you go to, I mean, most Jewish people, when you tell them you're an Israelite or a so-called African American may have a Jewish friend and they say they're Israelite, why do you think most times it's a surprise to the Jewish people to believe that there are basically African Hebrew Israelites? Is it, you know, is it the belief that they believe that the Israelites through Jacob were white people? Do they think, or is it more geopolitical? How do you view, why do, you know, a lot of the Jewish people, when you say, yo, I'm an Israelite, it's this big surprise to them? Why do you think that, Rob?
Well, the Jewish people in general, from the start of my work in this field, were surprised at anything having to do with the lost tribes. Most of the Jewish people weren't even aware, you know, at a certain point that the lost tribes was even a reality. They thought that the Jewish people were the exclusive remnants of the ancient house of Israel. That's really what they felt, that we are the last sole survivors of the people of Israel on this planet. Kind of like Lot and his daughters felt when they left Sodom and Gomorrah, they were on top of the mountain. They were like, oh, we're the last people alive. That's what the verse says. We have to populate the earth. So the Jewish people, you know, and this is the way I felt also at a certain point, we were just the last survivors of the house of Israel. And we come back to Israel. You know, we got Ethiopians, you know, so we got different colors, you know, it's already, we're good. And then when I started to read about what's going on in Afghanistan, you know, 40 million people, 8th-day circumcision, calling themselves Bani Israel, the children of Israel. They're there for 2,600 years, doing all these things and the customs of Moses. And I start talking to Jewish people about it, and they're like, what in the world? They can't even believe it. And then I show them the scriptures and the writings of the rabbis that speak about this reality of the lost tribes and the future ingathering when Israel wakes up from amongst the nations. So the Jewish people are surprised about the whole phenomenon in general. Nothing to do with dark-skinned people or Hebrew Israelites. They're just totally shocked by it. They got caught off guard, just like I did when I first found out about this. And then I had to do the research and read books and contact professors and find out what is actually going on over here. And so it's very surprising. It's just like a surprising thing for them. But we just need education and context so they understand what's going on. That's really what it comes down to. And also from the Jewish person, it's like, okay, so you're from the ancient house of Israel. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to come back and join the Torah? So some people are so like the Bnei Menashe from south of China. You know, these guys came and they converted and they're keeping Torah. And the Ethiopians came and they're keeping Torah. And so other people are saying we're from the house of Israel, but we're not keeping your Torah. We're not converting. We don't have anything to do with that, because if we're from the house of Israel, we shouldn't have to do that. So that's a whole other question or conversation we can have about that. But that's, you know, the Jewish people, once they get the whole picture, like this conversation, it gives context. So all these videos we're making these last few weeks, I have Jewish people reaching out to me and saying, wow, I didn't realize this was even going on. I appreciate you just laying it out for us. So it's just, I think, a huge misunderstanding. Not everyone's debriefed on the matter yet.
Okay. I heard one of the comments that you made. I was reading the listener audience comments. They love the presentation, and the reason why I wanted to bring this energy, because throughout all the presentations that I'm seeing on social media, it's very argumentative to the point that neither side, nobody's hearing each other. So I definitely appreciate you coming out here to us and bringing forth your view. One of the things that you did say that I don't know if people caught, but when you were saying about our community in Dimona having this interconnection with these different Israelite communities, and this, I mean, it's really growing by the millions right now. It's actually, the survey is saying that the Hebrew Israelite movement is the fastest growing, quote unquote, Black movement right now. And you were saying how the Israeli government may fear that many influx coming into the land. One, why do you think they fear that? And two, doesn't the prophecies say after, you know, the curses and we would go through the transatlantic slave trade, the East African slave trade being scattered all in the four corners of the earth. And the Book of Kings lets us know during the time of Melech Shalomo that if we would rethink ourselves in the land of captivity, that this catharsis would take place, this grassroots, and now we're seeing it flourish. So why do you think that the Israeli government is fearful of that influx? And two, isn't this a part of the fulfillment of prophecy?
All right. So let's say right now, conservatively, there's around 100 million people conservatively that say they're from the ancient house of Israel on the planet today. Between
Yes.
Nigeria, Afghanistan, and America alone, not even going across the Silk Road or going anywhere else, there's around 100 million people with this identity, blood, spiritual calling. So if you're the Jewish people, who's, let's say 6 or 7 million people in the land of Israel, you're like, what? Well, what goes on now? What are we? Some of these people are all in different religions and different customs, traditions. What are we? We can't just allow 100 million people to get the law of return and come back and flood the land smaller than the size of New Jersey. It's just not sustainable. So there's two separate realities, and there's a term in Jewish law called Zera Yisrael, the seed of Israel. So everyone could look up that Wikipedia page. I always encourage it. Zera Yisrael, Israel, and it means the seed of Israel. And it's just, the status is someone who's from the house of Israel but has lost their Jewish status, which means they got disconnected from the Torah, and so they're not Jewish, because to be Jewish you have to be reconnected to the Torah to be grafted in. So these are people who have the status seed of Israel on them, and then Jewish people are obligated to go and help them return. We have to serve them basically and assist them in returning to what's their ancestral heritage. So right now the Jewish state is saying it's not even enough to be Zera Yisrael. It's not enough to be of the seed of Israel to get the right of return. You have to become one with the 613 commandments and the Torah to return, and that's their rule, and that's the policy. I think it's somewhat balanced, because otherwise Israel's going to get flooded from people from all countries around the world, and it's already, what do you do? It's just going to lead to chaos. We need a Messiah. We need a king, someone who could bring order to this situation and figure out how to redistribute the land according to God. We need the prophecies to unfold. In the meanwhile, if someone is so passionate about getting in the land, it's not a big, well, I don't think it's a big deal to say, listen, all you need to do really is accept the laws of the Jewish people from the Torah, which is a beautiful thing. You keep the Shabbat and kosher and all this, and you go to a bath, you go to a ritual bath and dip in, and then there's no one checking up on you and making sure you're in, you're good, you've done your thing, you've grafted in. So someone has the option to graft in and get the right of return and come back home. But until then, because there's 100 million people with the status seed of Israel on them, the government of Israel is it doesn't have the wherewithal, the bandwidth, how to deal with that and how to process that into equality for everyone to have a share in the land. And and what we teach from our prophecies is that in the future, the borders of Israel spread north, south, east, and west. And if you look at the interesting thing, the Igbo of Nigeria and the Pashtun of Afghanistan aren't even really looking to come home to Israel, even though they say they're from the house of Israel. They're happy to stay there and keep their lands and establish it and put the name Israel on them over there. They want the wings of something called Israel to stretch itself and help liberate them and free them from oppressive tyranny and the governments put in place by the European church and the empire. So at the end of the day, we're going to have to figure out how to, like I said, I don't know. This is stuff for the Messiah. This is messianic stuff right here. How is this going to unfold and go down? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, the reason that's very interesting what you're saying, because there's a school of thought, like the school of thought that I come out of is 100% Torah centered. So many from my background, we don't subscribe to the Talmud. So now there's a argument within this circle. Like, for instance, when you were speaking about the Jewish people, okay, hallelujah. Dr. Baines, they just came on. Hallelujah. So I'll pass it to him shortly. I wanted to say like the term Jewish, it's being argued. There's a book written by Kohen Mikael Ben Levi. Have you ever read the book Israelites and Jews, The Significant Difference?
Nope.
That's a great book that by Kohen. He's one of the senior priests, and he's in South America, but he's a part of the Kingdom of YAH and Damona, Israel. And one of the things that they're arguing, and that we're arguing, is that the word Yehuda or Yahudi is of Judah. So the southern kingdom of Israel became known as Yehuda, Judah. Or when you speak of Yahudi, you're talking about those of the tribe of Judah. But then you have this geopolitical side of thing, or religious side of things, saying basically they're identifying the Jewish people at times as the whole house of Israel. Then you have this basically authoritative power that's basically saying, well, if you don't go by this, then basically you're not Jewish. Now, I don't subscribe to being Jewish. I'm a Hebrew Israelite, sovereign national from the tribe of Judah, but I don't subscribe to Judaism. How do you think they can, or the Sanhedrin in Israel, if you have millions of Hebrew Israelites that's saying, listen, we don't have to convert. We're already Israelites. If we say we're quote unquote Jews, but I'm from the tribe of Naphtali, then that's actually dishonoring my tribe. So you have these different points of view. How does the Sanhedrin in Israel deal with the growing of Israelites that think like this, that think like, listen, we're not Jewish, we're Hebrew Israelites, we're Hebrew Israelite sovereign nationals from this tribe, that tribe, this tribe. How do they deal with that? Because the reality is, it's just going to keep growing and keep growing to the point where it's going to have to be dealt with. How do you think they should deal with it? And what do you think is going to actually happen in the future when it comes to this how it's being viewed from those that deal with Talmudic school of thought versus those on the other side who's looking at it straight nationalistically? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, so the way a Talmud scholar or a Torah sage would respond back is say, first of all, we don't get involved in identifying who's from what tribe until the Messiah comes. The job of the Mashiach is going to be to tell everyone what tribe they're from. So someone could come all day long and say they're from this tribe, this tribe. It means nothing to the Jewish people. So when the Ethiopians came back, they said they think they're from the tribe of Gad, and the Bnei Menashe from Menashe. It didn't make a difference to us which tribe they came from. This is something for the Messiah. His role is going to break everyone back into their tribal camps. What's just more important is you want to become one nation again. That's really what we're focused on. And in every generation since Moses, there's been a Moses in each generation, meaning a spiritual leader who's passing on, taking authority for the Torah. So that's why I like to say, my rabbi, his rabbi, his rabbi. This stuff traces back rabbi to Ezra and Nehemiah without missing a generation. And we see that in the blessings from Jacob to Judah, he says you're going to hold on to the scepter of the law until Messiah comes. And we see that this law that's been passed down generation to generation of these rabbis whose brains were literally just in Torah. Their whole reality was just Torah. How to keep Shabbat, how to celebrate this, the laws of slaughtering animals properly, the laws of so all the laws. And so these are the men that control the Jewish people. The Jewish people is a nation of people and a nation of individuals. It's only a recent modern phenomenon that there's a power over the Jewish people that's not Torah-backed, that's not rabbinic power that rules over the Jewish people. The fact that we have political power ruling over us is a rather recent phenomenon. But the political power ruling over us structured the land where the rabbis are the gatekeepers of what's considered Jewish or not, which to some degree was still, interestingly, it had its positive aspects of it. So this is just the way we built the whole system of Torah and preserving it in the academies. And in the future, what I think is going to have to happen is, now that I know the Sanhedrin of Israel, the rabbis of Israel, they know about this phenomenon of what's going on in Africa and the tribal ingathering. and they kind of share the same viewpoint I do. Is there's going to be a scalable solution to this, where the being a part of the House of Israel is not necessarily going to make you, are you Jewish or not Jewish, but it's going to be a commonwealth, something that spans the whole entire world, where there's a system of unity and structure of the peoples. In the meanwhile, but like I said, this is very speculative stuff, and we'll see what happens in the times of the Messiah, how the tribes get labeled, identified, and reunited. I see we got Ben Sedek Hamagin joining us.
Yeah, I think the Mighty Hebrew, he fell off. Okay, there he is. He's coming back. Here he is. Let's go.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm sorry, you know, I'm in Tanzania, East Africa, so sometimes, you know, that'll drop like that. Yeah, you were saying, did you finish your statement, Robbie?
Yeah, I did.
Because
10-second elevator pitch was basically there's a Jewish leadership of every generation that keeps the Torah and the Jewish people in sync with what is relevant for us, you know, Torah wise, how to keep the Torah in our generation, because we always need fresh guidance, and those are the gatekeepers for who's Jewish or not, and that's been the way for thousands of years since the descendants of Ezra and Nehemiah. And in the future, I think there's going to be a way to scale being a part of the House of Israel that's not necessarily going to involve having to convert and take upon all the rigorous laws of Judaism and the Talmud.
okay, that's a great response, because in Yeshayahu from the 60th chapter going to the 66th chapter, we do see in measurement the identification of these tribes, because one of the things you were saying how it doesn't identify with tribes more or less, but even when you look at the discovery of the so-called Falashas, I like to call them Beta Yisrael, their original name, but even the rabbis in Israel and the Sanhedrin, they recognize them in many tribes in Africa. For whatever geopolitical reasons, they looked at them as the tribe of Dan.
Well, there was a specific
we do have
about hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Say that one more time.
A great rabbi named the Radbaz, hundreds of years ago, he wrote down that the Ethiopians, you know, this was before there was Zionism and stuff, that he wrote down that the Ethiopians are tribe of Israel from the tribe of Dan. So when today we're like, that was the only reference we had from one of the sages on our history that referenced that. But yeah, sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, no problem, no problem.
That's where we got that idea from.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have, for the listener audience, we have Dr. Bain Zadek. Are you there, Dr. Bain Zadek?
Dr. Bain, he's fell off again, so just give him a second.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's have a little short intermission. Rabbi, I got a couple of albums out. So I got a couple of albums out. I'm definitely an MC. I performed, you know, over in Israel, all over here in East Africa. So my first album came out, My Mental Was Never Destroyed. That came out 2021, November 2021. And then my new album, Journey to the Dark Side of the Moon, just came out a couple of months ago. You want to play something, Laura Melchizedek? I mean, Laura Mikael off the album? Give a little intermission.
Yeah, well, he just came back on. If you want to go ahead and bring him on.
Oh, no. If he just came back on, let's hear from Dr. Bain Zadek, who's a teacher at the Mighty Hebrew University, which is an online accredited university that I developed. He's a teacher. He's a part of the community in Dimona, Israel, and studied under Dr. Sabi, the late Ben Ami, the late Prince Dr. Shaliat Ben Yahuda, along with you know, our international ambassador and prime minister, the late Prince Asiel Ben Yisrael. I'm going to pass it to you, Dr. Bain Zadek. And later on in the program, I would like to ask Rabbi Harry Rozenberg his connections with Prince Asiel and the impact that he played in your life too, Rabbi. But go ahead, Dr. Bain Zadek. You in the building.
Shalom, 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 Nasi. Shalom, Rabbi Harry. Shalom, Kol Israel, to all those who are listening. Can you hear me clearly?
Oh, we hear you well. We hear you well.
All right, lovely, lovely. I was having issues with my internet as well. I'm here in Jamaica. All right, so I wasn't able to capture everything that was discussed, but one of the things I would like to bring in some connections with the ancient Hebrew Israelite people and culture in West Africa. But before I do that, I want to ask the rabbi a question. Do you subscribe to gematria?
I mean, whether I subscribe to or not, gematria is a phenomenon that is viewable, where you could see that the numerical values of the letters of the Torah create a different storyline that gives context behind the scenes of the Torah through a mathematical code.
Perfect. Lovely answer. All right. And would you say then it's a critical component that we have to use to make connections or to decipher the Torah, especially as it relates to culture and prophecy?
It's a tricky thing to do. I mean, gematria referred to in our schools of study as like parparo, like butterflies. It's like dessert, icing on the cake. It sweetens the whole thing because you could see what we're teaching and learning. All the laws that we're learning, we could actually see embedded in the gematria of the Torah itself. So it shows you how deep the Torah is. But at the same time, gematria could be something that I could come up with a gematria to say, hey, the gematria of this word righteous equals my full name, and so I must be righteous. Gematria is also built in a way where there could be a lot of human, just pulling it out and making it up. So the gematria we teach is based on a tradition. Like Jewish people aren't really making up so many new gematrias as much as the gematrias we were taught by our ancestors that's embedded in it. But it would seem that because we teach the 70 faces to the Torah, so that means the Torah has 70 different layers of how information was embedded in it, and gematria is one of them. So you should be able to pull information out of the Torah with gematria, but it doesn't mean to say that a human could also make up a really cool gematria.
Okay. The other question to that is, would you say then that the Torah is embedded with a lot of allegories that one have to be well trained within the culture, the language, and gematria, and a number of other components to properly decipher?
Yeah, the Torah is one big allegory. It's one big hidden, it's all layers to it. And this is why we had the schools of the prophets, that they were able to see within the Torah what was going on and understand the analogy. In Hebrew, it's the mashal and the nimshal. What's the analogy and what is it referring to? You would have to be a master of Torah study and scholarship to have that level of wisdom. And that's a reality.
Okay. Are you familiar with this word found in Psalms 119, verse 130? Patach?
Say the Psalms again. I'll pull it up because I have
Psalms 119, verse 130.
Okay, hold on. Psalms 119. You said 119?
Verse 130.
Okay, hold on. I'm pulling it up. And what was the word you said?
Patach or petach.
Like means to open or opening?
Correct. You familiar with that term?
Yeah, we use it in Hebrew all the time.
Can you, when you say you use it in Hebrew, explain a little bit more?
To open something up. If I want to open a door, liftoach et hadelet, I'm going to open this door.
Let's say that. All right. Is there any other context it's using when dealing with allegories?
I guess to ptach shemaim, to open up the heavens, we would use that expression. Make a petach inside ourselves for God. We make an opening inside ourselves for the Creator to come in.
All right. I want to use that as a segue into what I'm about to share. Now, when we look in West Africa, one of the major tribes of Israel that came into the Americas via what is called the transatlantic slave trade is the Yoruba. And I notice a very telling correlation in the Yoruba cosmology and what we see here in the Torah. The Yoruba refer to the allegories pertaining to creation, morality, the Mosai, the Malachim. They refer to all those allegories are encoded in what is called pataki. And you have to have a Baba Lao. Baba is Abba, Lao is Lawi, from the root Ao, which is the root of Levi or Levi. You have to have a particular person of that nature to decipher the pataki. Do you see a correlation there with that term patak and how Melech David used it in Psalms 119, verse 130?
Yeah, I was looking up. Well, first of all, it's just interesting what you said. I love to see, you know, we see these customs, traditions of Moses and the people of Israel scattered amongst the people who say they're from the house of Israel. So it's a beautiful thing to see. But I pulled up this thing, and it also petach here. I think the way it's translated is I'll read it what I'm reading from the commentary. The commencements of your words, like the opening or the beginning of God's words. You know, like we say Bereshit bara, in the beginning God created. So petach also, I think they're referring to here, and it has a beginning energy to it. But it sounds very interesting what you're saying.
So what I'm hearing is that we are able to see a number of words used in the Torah. And then when you step into West Africa provides you with the cultural context. When I say cultural context, because they are living the culture. So when you go to a Babalawo and they give you Urim, Turim, reading, they have to open, they have to unlock the teachings and give you the understanding and give you the light. It's not necessarily given to the layman to interpret. The Babalawo is skilled in that area. So what I'm seeing here is what I'm seeing here amongst the Yoruba is the working model of the actual meaning of that term, patak. They pronounce it as pataki. Now, I'm going to add another component to this. The Yoruba have a concept known as Orisha. And the letter O simply means ownership. It is almost like L. It is actually a direct cognate to L. As in to yoke, to be bonded in a student-teacher relationship like Elohim, from the root L. So Orisha refers to the primordial forces, or the Elohim, that work cohesively, bonded in a student-teacher relationship with the Aleph, with Yehovah, to manifest creation and sustain creation. Now, there is a Yoruba professor. I believe he studied at Yale, and I believe he's probably fluent in Hebrew. And he discovers something very startling between the word Orisha and the Hebrew word Resh, and I believe Haremic, Reshu, the Amharic, which is another so-called Shemitic language, Ras, right? When you look at the meaning of Orisha, you're dealing with the primordial forces, right? And when you look at the Hebrew word Yisrael, some say Yashar Allah. you notice that the word Israel is coming from, it's like an agglutinative morpheme. It's formed from 3 words. Yis, as in he, ye, sar, and el. So you notice in the book of Daniel, Michael is referred, the Malachi Michael is referred to as Sar. And as a chief Sarim amongst the Malachim, right? And those Malachim are referred to as primordial forces. Very similar to what the Yoruba call Orisha. And then when you look at the word El in Israel, we see that it's inferring to be yoke in a student-teacher relationship with the Aleph. So when you look at the overall definition of Israel, you get he, that is yoke, he, a primordial spirit, a primordial forces, first in rank and order, primordial forces, yoked in a student-teacher relationship with the El, or with the Aleph, which is Yehovah. So right away, I'm able to see that Israel is a direct cognate of the Yoruba term Orisha. So when you go in the first book of Genesis, which is called Barashit, you also notice the term Ras is built in the word Bereshit. So when you look at the first letter Beit in Barashit, it's a prefix, but it also implies with, right? So, and it has a numerical value of 2. So it can imply 2 things. With cell division, the first, the Ras, the first in rank and order, brought into existence by way of the term bara, he create, he refine. It can also implies that he purified. So brought into existence Elohim et. Elohim et is not just a definitive article. It is also it also means a plowshare, a tool of cultivation. So it's implying that the Elohims are tools of cultivation that manifest Hashamayim Wa'et Aharetz. So we go right back now to the word Barashit, and we're able to see now that within the word Barashit is the word Ras, is the word Sar, if you invert the Sar in Israel. So you're seeing that the Most High is saying everything starts with rank and order, manifestation of the primordial beings that manifest and sustain creation, bonded in a student-teacher relationship with the Most High. So when you take the term Israel now and go back to the Yoruba word Orisha, you're able to see that Israel is a direct cognate of the Yoruba word Orisha. So if we move from the Yoruba and go to another cousin tribe, we see that among the Fon people, among the Ewe, among the Igbo, we see that the L in Orisha, the R in Israel, in the SR, Sar, or the R in Ras becomes the L. So amongst the Igbo, you get Olise. Amongst the Fon people, you get Lisa, but it still implies first in rank and order, primordial beings. Why am I bringing this up? To show you a working cultural context. I'm saying that Israel, on an etheric level, before the body, the physical manifestation of a people, on an etheric level, the Yoruba and the Fon cosmology is saying that we were first in rank and order primordial beings. So when you go to Jeremiah 51, verse 19, you see where Jacob is referred to as the former of all things, not just referring to the physical manifestation of the 12 tribe of Israel, which earned its name from Jacob. It's implying our etheric nature as Orisha, as primordial beings, before we came into physical manifestation. So what I'm showing you now is a working retention, a working model that also sheds greater light on what we see in the Torah. Because we know that you have 12 zodiac, and each zodiac is governed by an angel, planetary bodies, and so forth. At the same time, we know that Jacob have 12 sons. So we see a direct etheric correlation. So we are able to see in West Africa this level of direct correlation with the Torah in terms of cultural retention, but a retention that heightened the meaning of these concepts and put things in proper context. Another example to further accentuate before I pause and let you respond. Amongst our Akan, which is another related family in West Africa, the Akan said, before you come into physical existence, you're given an okra. Now, okra is defined as soul. But when you take the word okra into Hebrew, you realize it's a direct cognate. It comes from the root rak, which means a traveler. Now, from that word rak, resh, chet, you get arak, a traveler who traveled a prescribed path. From that same root rak, you also get ruach. And ruach is, okra, among the Akan, is a direct cognate to ruach. It's just inverted spelling. So the ruach, in that context, among the Akan people, it defines your character. It gives character. So the Akan people say, before we came into physical existence, we are assigned a obasum, an angel, to guide us. Now, this is not far-fetched, because we see in the book of Daniel, chapter 9, when Daniel needed skill and understanding, the Malachim, Michael, and Gabriel came and gave him skill and understanding. When Jacob needed guidance, there was also a Malachim that was there with him. So within the Akan cosmology, they say that we are all assigned a Malachim that we are supposed to model ourselves after. They bring our character. They bring the example on the behalf of the Aleph, Yehovah, the Creator. So right away we see that we have an etheric nature to us that we are supposed to model ourselves after. So now we can put it all together and then understand that what the Yoruba is conveying when they said we are supposed to model ourselves after the Orisha. So on a collective, the whole house of Israel are an etheric people with an etheric higher nature that we have fell from and need to reconnect to in order to manifest Jeremiah 51 verse 20, because it says, with you I will break nation in pieces, in simple, to restore the earth back to constructive interference where everything is in alignment with the Aleph. Everything is in alignment with the Torah. So we fell from that etheric nature into this decadent state that we find ourselves in all over this planet. So what I'm showing you is that in West Africa, that teaching is preserved, but it's like unto anything I have ever seen or heard, even from the so-called sages of the Torah. I just wanted to introduce that portion.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think where you ended off last about Israel being etheric and something spiritual and beyond the physical and a higher state that we once fell from all resonates well with me. If you look at the diaspora from the four corners of the world, including who we spoke about before, the B'nai Menashe south of China and the Pashtun of Afghanistan and the tribes of Africa, we're seeing things where they've held on to teachings and cultural realities that shed light on the Torah that the Jewish people preserved, which is a beautiful thing. And I think you just demonstrated a nice example of that. The Jewish people are very academic people, so something like the presentation you just gave, they would study it and see the sources and read it and like weave through it and analyze it, just like all the Jewish teachings, all about analyzing and study. So that's the evolution of your great theory. And people who produce works that showcase complementary spiritual ideas to the Torah gets well adapted by the Jewish people and they respect it. And if they have academic issue with it, then you take it up and we build for the greater building. I had a theory on chemicals and the plants of the Beit and the Holy Temple and the elevated state of consciousness. So I wrote it out and I let people battle me. Where am I off? Where did I loop and where did I didn't? So I think that's the evolution of your thought. I didn't really understand what you were saying too much about. It shows you said something about the chosen elite, or you said the one. I didn't understand what you were saying. That it proves what you were saying, that you were something other than everyone else could be part of. And so you could explain that. And lastly is the Jewish people have on the word Bereshit, the first words of the Torah, books and books and books and books. And I can't even count how many pages of commentary that dive into the embedded hidden wisdom and information in these words. So I'm sure you would also appreciate, just like we'd appreciate your contribution to learn about what, the secret teachings we have on this and create, maybe there's a similarity between both you haven't found yet, which would be interesting.
Okay. You said there was a portion that you didn't understand. Can you
at one
explain?
point you were like peeking on your point and I didn't understand you were saying, and that shows that you said something that was like elite or the one or the only something. I didn't understand.
No, that's not what I was implying. What I'm showing you, what I'm showing you is working what I'm saying is that these concepts are in the day-to-day life of the people in West Africa. It's culture. It's not even religion. It's culture. That's all I'm saying. It's culture. Now, the other thing is that what I wanted to highlight, because I hear you speak of unity, and I'm going to take it back to the Yom Kippur model, that if there is to be unity, there is some discrepancy. And if we are about truth, then we have to put it all on the line, because truth is observable and is verifiable, right? So there have been a number of authors who receive sources from European Jews to substantiate their argument relative to the transatlantic slave trade, right? The other thing is that, let me furnish that point some more. it is said that Jews financed the slave trade of African Hebrew Israelites from West Africa that was brought into the Americas and Europe and elsewhere. Now, prophetically, it never said that the original Hebrew Israelite would finance their own slave trade per se. It said that they would sell themselves into slavery. So how do you rectify if you are acknowledging us as Israelites and you are saying you are also a Jew, an Israelite? How do you reconcile the fact that the people you are speaking on the behalf of, as you did a while ago, finance the slave trade? That's one, the Dutch West Indies Shipping Company, and also capitalize significantly of Africans in the Americas as it relates to music and a number of significant industries. But I'm going to focus on music because it is a known fact that the leading producers, or the majority of the producers in hip hop today, are Jews. And when we listen the content of the music that they are paying this jockey to play, that they are paying African American Hebrew Israelites who have lost their identity and are vibrating in a lower vibratory state, when we look at the amount of money they give them to promulgate derogatory content that promote black on black violence and degradation of a woman, something is wrong with that picture. And when you look who is behind it in terms of the record, the producers, it's Jews. How do you reconcile that?
Okay, great. First of all, I think that the Jewish people, prior to these ideas that you're speaking about being planted in the minds of humans, had a great relationship with the African Americans. Were very a part of the marches, the liberation frontiers. I know Jews died alongside African Americans to try to help free them. I think a lot of these ideas you're speaking about are not necessarily authentically factual. To say that the Jews were behind the whole entire thing or financed the whole entire thing, that was some stuff like that Minister Farrakhan school of thought that came to create a divide amongst people. I know that the Dutch, the West Indies Company, when this was founded, didn't even allow Jews to participate in any ownership structures. It wasn't founded by Jewish people. Jews are very smart, so it would be an ideal thing to hire a Jew to run money. And also Jews at that time were only allowed to do certain things as far as money goes and insurance and money things. We weren't allowed to own land or have rights in Europe. So the Jews were forced into certain money lending positions because that was the only thing we were allowed to do, because Christians don't lend money and Muslims don't lend money. But I think that from what I'm understanding is the royal family and the Christians were the largest financiers and operators of the slave trade. The Muslims were the one that sold them to slaves. And the Jews, because of their position of only allowed to be involved in money lending, didn't care what was going on. They were just doing their thing to make a living. And if there are Jewish families that you could trace today that still have wealth from whatever money they made, I would have no problem signing a petition that they should sign some form of reparations. But from speaking to so many academics on all different sides of this, it really does seem that whoever these Jews in the media are working for, Minister Farrakhan working for the same guys, they're both on the same payroll, and they're both coming here to create a divide amongst us. So I've come to the conclusion for sure that some of these ideas that you're speaking about were brought into reality to create a disunity and a disharmony between us. And so that's my only red flag. When anyone tries to separate, I just say, hey, no, that's not what's going to get us out of this mess.
Now, I hear your response.
Hold on. I would just like to say something real fast, less than 1 minute. I was telling you earlier, Rabbi, there's another side of the coin. And as you can see, the doctor brought it. I want to make it clear, these arguments don't come from Minister Louis Farrakhan, but they're actually documented records, you know, that elements within the Jewish community, they did play a major role in the transatlantic slave trade. And when you start talking about different companies, a lot of companies were created by these Jewish elites that have front names, you know what I'm saying? And even to the point they would use other names or, you know, a fronted face, but they were financially backing up them companies. So we don't want to, even when you look at NBC, NSNBC, CBS, all the major broadcast networks, when you look at the record labels, I mean, everything is controlled and ran and funded by this Jewish elite. There's no way of getting around it because the documents is out there, which doesn't have anything to do with the most honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It has everything to do with Jewish people themselves. Not all of them, I'm talking about those that wrote about it. So when you read books like Secret Relations Between Blacks and Jews, when you look at all 3 volumes, all the Nation of Islam there was took excerpts from Jewish writers that made these statements, that made these claims. But that's all I wanted to say. But go ahead, Dr. Bangs.
Yeah, just a moment there.
Yeah, just to
Can you hear
respond to that
me?
also. Okay, yeah, you go, then I'll respond.
Okay, yeah, one second there, one second. Yeah, so I was saying, as Nasik said rightly, I wasn't referring to Minister Farrakhan. Notice I didn't even call any names, because in the archives here in Jamaica, Jews owned slaves, owned my people here in Jamaica. And the names are also passed down. And in the archives, it was revealed that they hired the Scottish to manage the plantation to hide their identity. The same thing occurred in Suriname. I'm not the one saying this. These are scholars, European scholars, bringing this information to the forefront, especially now as it relates to Suriname, because they're saying that they flourish in the Dutch colonies and in the English colonies. So in Jamaica, Aruba, Suriname, you find that Jews own a lot of African Hebrews as slaves. And as Mighty Hebrews saying, the records are showing that they played a major role. And so the reason why I'm bringing up that, because the issue is not about divide and conquer. The issue is about truth. If there is to be reconciliation, just like in South Africa, you have Truth and Reconciliation Committee, we have to lay all on the line, meaning that as diasporian African Hebrews, when we go back into West Africa, we're gonna lay all on the line with the kings and the royal families who sold us too. So if you're bringing forward the spirit of unity, then you have to be prepared to deal with the uncomfortable issues, because the records are there.
Right. Well,
so
listen,
I didn't mention.
We just say Farrakhan's name because there was a book that was published, A Secret Relationship Between the Black and the Jews, and they take an issue of very few select families and elite people who may or not had fraternity to church secret societies at the time, and they put it on the modern day Jew of Brooklyn today, just trying to get to salvation, trying to get to the redemption. So there has to be the power of discernment. This would be like me having some beef against German people today. I don't have anything against German people today. I'm at peace with the German people. Yes, there were reparations, and that that German helped Israel. They gave them some funds. They got some buses and all these infrastructures. They helped them build roads. And I think part of my work is to say, the Jewish people are meant to be a light on the nations. If these people were taken from their land without any resources and start from scratch here and are still living in you know, such a destitute state of you know, control and oppression, it's our moral obligation to lend a hand and help them get to their level of what they would consider freedom. So I think that's actually true. But to take the history of, you know, from the years 1600s, from people that I'm not getting any money from, and then throw that on me as an individual, that's where the divide and conquer comes up. Like, I'm sitting here at the table saying, I'm on your team. Let's get land and build communities and self-sustainable, and we'll get Jewish foundations to help support it, because, you know, maybe there was a history that needs to get fixed. But to put us as the enemy, which is what came out of these ideas, that's where it gets very dangerous. And as I said before in this show to the prince, I'm not sure if we fully answered it, is when Joseph was sold as a slave, and, you know, he later confronted his brothers who sold him. He didn't get angry at them or say, you owe me anything. He was like, this is from the Most High. Now look where we are. We're together. We got this. And they went forward together. He didn't make it as a point of contention. And that's why we praise Joseph for seeing God's master plan. So here we are. I'm in the room. You're in the room. We're all together. Are we going to make this something that's going to divide us or unite us? And as far as also, you know, Abraham had slaves. All of our forefathers had slaves. All the Israelites had slaves. A slave is not something you can hurt or whip or treat poorly. A slave in the Torah had rights. It was more like a servant in the house, and this is from the scriptures. And if there's only one pillow, your servant gets that pillow, and you got to provide from a wife and a family and take care of him. And if you got one meal, he gets it first. Whoever didn't treat a human right has no portion in the Torah or share in righteousness. So I'm not defending any human who treated a human poorly. There's no tolerance for any of it.
I understand where you're coming from, but what I'm saying here, I think you're missing the point of what I'm saying. If you bring certain accusations to me, I'm not gonna, especially when relative to a people that I represent, I'm not gonna sit here and say, well, they did not do. Especially if we're talking about truth and reconciliation. Well, I'm going to say, let's look, let me finish. I'm going to say, let's look at the record. Because everything has been documented. The Scottish did a good record of keeping, a good job at keeping the records here in Jamaica. And the same thing was done in Suriname. The records are there. So my thing is, I wouldn't come out and outright defend anything or anybody. I'm going to say, let's look at the record. Especially to at least make those who are saying that we are victim of your people, to make them feel inclusive. That would be the right approach. Let us go before the courts. Let us go before the Sanhedrin. Let us look at the record. That should be the spirit. That's the spirit of reconciliation. Let's look at the evidence. Now, the other thing, you did not mention anything about the music industry. But the other thing I want to mention is that in an interview, or there was a Facebook clip where you were sharing some information with a Jewish body. And you mentioned that perhaps, you mentioned that there's a significant amount of Hebrew Israelites in Africa, and you mentioned that perhaps some of us are converts or Roman converts. Now, let's go back into the prophecies, because the Most High says in Hosea 4 verse 6, if I'm correct, I reveal my secrets to my servants, the prophets. It infers to me that prophecy, a critical component to Israelite or Israeli identity. It's critical. The prophets are the spokesperson for Yahweh Elohim. So, if the prophecy says that my people were dispersed beyond the rivers of Kush. And we know that today those rivers are the Gihon and the Pishon, the Blue and the White Nile. We know that's Africa.
I mean,
right?
a lot of other verses with other locations as well.
I'm clear about that, right? Now, we also know that in Jeremiah 1, verse 11 through 17, it speaks of the families of the north coming to invade Jerusalem, Northeast Africa, and the whole African continent. And we notice that in Jeremiah 1, verse 11 through 14, 15, there are some patak that was used, some allegories that have to be unlocked in terms of the character of the people that are coming to exploit and enslave Can you hear me?
Yep.
So listen, I think his mic is he's got a bad connection here. Let's do this. Let's check out one of your songs, Mighty Hebrew, and then we'll come right back after that.
Okay, let's do it.
All right.
You find all of them are waiting for somebody to come and get them. Mm-hmm. You have to free yourself. Bob Marley got that song, you have to free yourself from mental slavery. None of us can change the time. When I realized that we can change the time, because it's already been set in motion, all we got to do is apply what we know. And that's what I've been doing. So,
Stevie Wonder.
What about him?
Okay, I know from the information from the elders, they were saying, if I'm not mistaken, his nanny or somebody was a part from Detroit and wound up going to Demona.
I met him in 1973 when she used to take care of little Stevie. And she went to Israel with me and her husband. Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely, because I seen Stevie Wonder visit over there to Demona.
Stevie to Israel and performed in Israel. Yeah, right. I took Barry White, the Neville brothers, Whitney and Bobby. We've been pushing it. So I ain't been ashamed to lift up us as a people.
Asiel, the Redeemer Angel's here. Prince Asiel, Prime Minister is here. Prince Asiel, Hamashiach is here. Prince Asiel, Suffer Bomb is here. Prince Asiel, the Redeemer Angel's here. Prince Asiel, Hamashiach is here. Hebrew Israelite, Sovereign Nationals risen. Heavy mental, break metal from the devil. In darkness, sparks of light touch hearts. In America's ghetto jungle, sounds of thunder. Cold ears like gun claps, bodies rumble. When one gang bangs, demon babies incarnate omens from UFO clouds beyond 8 Mile. War in heaven, Mikael as Asiel, birthed in Jerusalem, the mighty Hebrew from birth scene, the poison from the serpent's needle that perceived divine beings from Eden, known as Elohim. Rambo, first blood, being redeemed, Adamic seeds from amongst the trees that was deceived in the garden. Kakma was lost as we travel from Lemuria, our birthplace, for desert roads and lonely days, drowning in waters like Jason, Crystal Lake, United Snakes, a death place.
Prophesying Deuteronomy 28. No place will be safe to Asiel reign. Earth to reign, Metatron. From celestial to the physical plane. As we move supreme with our own team. Prince Asiel, the redeeming angels here. Prince Asiel, Prime Minister is here. Prince Asiel, Hamoshiach is here. Prince Asiel, Sephiroth is here. Prince Asiel, the redeeming angels here. Prince Asiel, Hamoshiach is here. Hebrew Israelite, sovereign nationals risen. Every mental break mental from the devil. Beware the stairs, people under the stairs. Lying there for freedom, for a Hebraic heir. Holding the scepter in a golden chair. Nasi, Asiel, Malik, the throne of King David sovereign. National established, signs of lion paws and tassels. Hebrew Israelite, sovereign nationals risen. Hit the West with mine like a comet. Laza vomit, Torah Constitution we follow. Solomon, I go into the souls of men to see the real from the fake in them. Asiel be the unstained glass. Bashing your Gentile oppression from eastern to western through all scepters. Intercept by way of prison spectrums. Raise up cycles, is electric. The brotherhood elevated. Separating infinite, the oneness within, be no end. Remember, Israel, we on the rise for all mankind. Prince Asiel, the redeeming angels here. Prince Asiel, Prime Minister is here. Prince Asiel, Hamoshiach is here. Prince Asiel, Sephiroth is here. Prince Asiel, the redeeming angels here. Prince Asiel, Hamoshiach is here. Hebrew Israelite, sovereign nationals risen. Every mental break mental from the devil. The devil.
And we know the one thing that is necessary now is the you and I-ism. That is the key of the future of the black man, black woman in America. And the destiny of the black world rests solely with the direction in which the black man, black woman in America take. The international ramifications that Jesse Jackson spoke to with the PLO question goes way beyond that. Way beyond that. Because once we involve ourselves with a solution outside of America, then there are keys that are not controlled by the enemies of our people within the confines of America. If Africa is the continent that is richest and represents 80% of the world's known resources, and if Black America is that nation of African people that represent the intellectual resources of the world, it's a perfect marriage that must take place. And this is what we're talking about developing here. As we organize nationally, we are organizing internationally. For those are the keys for the total survival of our people. So this is what we bring to this conference.
Hey, again, Mighty Hebrew, that is some powerful music. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you.
You know, as a
That
writer,
was in
as an artist.
dedication. That was in dedication to my late grandfather, Prince Asiel ben Yisrael. That's on my new album, Journey to the Dark Side of the Moon. That's called Prince Asiel. And I just want the Hebrew Israelite sovereign nation to know we have our own sages and seers in our communities. Like you heard earlier, Rabbi Harry was saying, you know, his rabbi, his rabbi, his rabbi. With me, it would be like people like Kazari Dar ben Yisrael, Sar, Rabah ben Yisrael, the late Ben Ami, the late Prince Dr. Shaliah, Prince Asiel. These like men I set under their feet, who they were understudies of like the late Eliyahu Bowie, Arya, going back to Rabbi Matthews, Rabbi Arnold Josiah Ford, all the way to, you know, Prophet Cherry, Prophet William S. Crawley, and even going back to some of the oldest Israelite communities in the United States, going back to 1798. But again, giving all praise and honor to YAH Yisrael for being here. I just want to put something out there. The brother has brought up some real powerful questions and statements. And what the doctor was doing was showing the culture or the cultural structure that you see in West Africa. You can clearly see the Israelite presence in that. So it's deeper than just by faith we're Israelites. In the scripture, it talks about the resurrection of a genetically group of people, the children of Israel rising. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, Rabbi, that it slipped my mind. Oh, but before I do go into that, I did answer the question about the Joseph story. And I was going into the prophecy showing that in the end, Israel was responsible, you know, because we were given the law, statutes, and commandments. And when you look at Deuteronomy chapter 28:68, that was grossly mistranslated. So it didn't say that, you know, we would sell ourselves. You know what I mean? It says when we would go into captivity, we would be sold to our enemies and no man would save us. Verse, no man would buy us. It used the word shua, the Hebrew word for save, in that specific verse. But to get to the point what I'm saying, question, why in the Sanhedrin in Israel, because I have a few more questions and I'm gonna wrap it up. Why in the Sanhedrin, when it comes to so-called African Americans and Negroes scattered all over the world, want to make a former aliyah, and it gets like so critical that it's a whole like song and dance when it comes to European abstraction of Jewish people coming from different parts of the world. They ain't got no problem with letting them in Israel, even with the situation with Ukraine and what's going on. They done let tons of Ukrainian Jews in. My question is, why when it comes to so-called African Americans returning to the land, it's such a problem with us getting in the land, citizenship. I don't see this with people that is not of the African abstraction. I only see this with people when it comes to African Americans, mainly. You know what I'm saying? Even to the point, because I've been on ground in Israel, even to the point where the Israeli authorities didn't even want the Israelites from Ethiopia. I don't like saying Ethiopian Jews. I like to be correct. The Israelites from Ethiopia that went through Operation Moses, Operation Solomon, they were told by Israeli authorities not to deal with us in Dimona. We're just now starting to get a relationship with the Israelites from Ethiopia because of the years of them being separated from us by the authoritative hand. Why do you think when it comes to African Americans returning home, why is it such a problem with them, but it's not a problem with other people? Not to say that there wasn't never a question of Jewishness with individuals, but when it comes to a collective aliyah, I mean, from Christian missionaries to Jewish people, they finance this return of the European abstraction of Jewry. But when it comes to Hebrew Israelite sovereign national, why do you think it's so hard for them to come into the land?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I just want to start off with where you started off was the verse Deuteronomy 28:68. I think the language is "Avadim l'shafachot in kona." There's not going to be a buyer, so I think we'll look into that afterwards to get clarity on the verse. But regarding your question I mean, there's a lot of people from Afghanistan reaching out to the government of Israel now saying they're from the house of Israel. They shouldn't have to convert. They want to come home. And the government of Israel saying this is a land for the Jewish people and the Jewish people have the right of return. And so when you look at the Ethiopians, they were actually for 2,000 years recorded that there was Jews over there, that they were from the house of Israel, that they were there. There's been, over the last 1,000 years, letters and contacts and word that they were there and rabbis writing about them. And when you saw that all the customs and traditions that the Ethiopians were keeping of the laws of Moses and the Torah, and the fact that they were even persecuted by their government for being from the house of Israel and all this stuff, it's a different level. I mean, they had to convert, to come back and say we're one with this Torah. The exile separated from us, we're coming back to it, and there was no problem with that from their perspective. That doesn't mean that the government of Israel is not acting racist towards them and didn't treat them poorly compared to the European Jews, because I'm not here to defend the government of Israel. But at the end of the day, the African American community is different in the fact that there's certain groups of them. They're saying, we're not doing this whole thing of the Torah that you guys have. We're our own people. We have our own prophets. We got our own situation going on. And the Jewish people saying, fine, no problem. It doesn't work with the right of return. The right of return is for the people keeping the Torah. And that's what it is now in this exile state. When the Messiah comes, maybe it'll change. These things I'm hopeful for. But there's no room for these racial things. But this is not a Jewish European thing, because the people who get to convert come back from anywhere in the world, and they brought Jews from Iran and from Morocco and from Iraq and from Syria, from all different parts of the world, not just Europe. But there is, like you brought up a great point, the rabbis of Israel are very unhappy, though, about all the Russians and the Ukrainians that were brought over, with some of them with very questionable Jewish status of their history, if they really actually were Jews, that they're not religious. Some of them are atheists and not God-fearing people. These were great scientists and did help the development of Israel's technology boom. But the rabbis are saying, what are you doing allowing all these people to come back without even knowing their halachic, their legal Jewish status? And even it goes as crazy enough that a reform or conservative conversion in America, which Orthodox doesn't even consider valid, it wouldn't consider the person who goes through reformed and conservative conversion actually Jewish. That doesn't mean they're not a good person, but just Jewish law wouldn't agree with that. The government of Israel allows them to make aliyah, to move to Israel, reform or conservative conversion. So you could be not even a God-fearing person, with Christmas trees in your house, and you say, I want to become Jewish, you go through the reform conversion, you get citizenship here. But at the same time, an Orthodox conversion gets like super extreme vetting, and it's very hard to find an approved Orthodox conversion and this and that. So it's like, why is the government of Israel allow conservative and reform conversions, which is just, I want to sign a piece of paper and say I'm in, but not like legitimate people who want to break their back to the Torah?
So silly cow, not to cut you off. Yeah, not to cut you off, Rabbi, but do you see a problem in this? Like, if we're in the yoke of the enemies in the United States that was controlled by the Euro-Gentile or the European pen, when European colonialists came and conquered like over 77 million natives, and then in turn took Hebrew Israelites from West Africa and even other non-Hebrew Israelites that may have been of different tribes and put them in slavery. So now when we return back to our land, now we're going under another European abstraction, when the prophecy clearly said that Israel will return and set up a kingdom. And when you look at the Sanhedrin, it's very geopolitical in base, and it's very controlling. When we see in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 36 and 37, I paraphrase, said, I will send you and your king into a strange land which neither you nor your fathers have known. And there you will worship idols, even wood and stone. And I will make you an object of horror, a proverb and a byword amongst the nations of the earth. So if this is the case, and one of the prognostications of the degradation of our identity would be a loss of identity, then you have the Jewish Sanhedrin that's now saying your mother either has to be Jewish or you have to go by the way of halakha, knowing that our records were destroyed, knowing that there's an argument within the Hebrew Israelite world of tracing lineage through the father or through the mother. What I see, and it's no disrespect, what I see is many Europeans that converted by the way of Judaism, which is an interpretation of African Hebrew thought, and now they're controlling the narrative. They're controlling the narrative because we don't have Gaditism, we don't have, Naphtaliism, we don't have Reubenitism. Judaism, to me, the name was created geopolitically because any sovereign nation or people know you have to have a national jurisdiction and you have to have ecclesiastical jurisdiction. So the national jurisdiction would come from out of the longs of King Dawid or King David, the tribe of Judah. and then the ecclesiastical jurisdiction would come by the way of Lewi or Levi. And when I see the Jewish world, it's as if they're controlling the narrative by identifying themselves either with Judah or Levi. To me, these are geopolitical social constructs to control a reality of being dominant over the rest of the house of Israel. Now, I'm not saying they're literally Judah or literally Levi, but they're using the power structure to control. Again, if we look at the Torah and the Tanakh, this was about a nation of people having a national identity. Another thing you were saying about the conversion, the reason why I have a problem with that, because I don't believe anywhere in the Torah or the Tanakh it talks about this conversion or the sojourn, or by the way of conversion. The soldiers is those that were from other nations that may have been naturalized within the house of Israel. It's just like if I want to be a Chinese citizen, I just can't go to China and say, I'm Chinese. No, I have to go through the whole geopolitical process of naturalization. That's what it means from a sovereign nationalistic understanding. The soldiers that's amongst us, they will go through a naturalization process, and that will only occur when we have our own sovereign autonomy, sovereign government. So I don't see anywhere where it's this conversion process of the Israelites. If you already an Israelite, what are you converting for? You know, it makes no sense. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I think the argument lies when it comes to Hebrew Israelite sovereign nationals versus one that is a practitioner of Judaism. It's the halakha, it's the conversion, who's in control, the same people or the same abstracted look that had us in slavery in one hemisphere. We go to another hemisphere and we're seeing the racism. We know what we went through in Dimona. We know about the showing the strength in 1986, how the Israeli government came to Dimona with tanks and pulled out one of the oldest women in our community in her nightgown. We know how they brought the dogs down there and guns and different things like that. And the constant racism, even to this day, that the Israeli government has showed against our people. How can we say that this is of YAH, but we can't identify none of this stuff in the Torah? We can't identify it nowhere in the Tanakh. It just seemed like it's just another European people that's trying to oppress the indigenous population. We see it at the Jerusalem prison gate. All the indigenous Ishmaelite people or original Black Palestinians, you don't see them, but they're being oppressed. They call me Cushy. When I went through the airport, they call me Cushy, which we know that's a derogative term. You know what I mean? That's just another term for nigger. So they still using these terms. So with all that I said, don't you think that just as the United States power structure need to be broken down, would not the Israeli Sanhedrin, through the racism that it has festered, wouldn't that whole structure need to be broken down and create a strictly Torah-centered structure? What do you think about that?
You're talking about two different things that we're mixing into one. One is the laws of the Torah and the Jewish people, which dates back to Ezra and Nehemiah. And the word Jewish really comes, you even see in the story of the book of Esther, where you have Mordechai, who was from the tribe of Benjamin, is referred to as Ish Yehudi, from the house of Judah. He was referred to as a Judahite, even though this is already in scriptures. Then Ezra and Nehemiah come back to the land and establish the courts again. The Sanhedrin was established by them. And this is where the transmission goes. This has nothing to do with Europe. This flourished in Babylon until the year 1100. And by the time it made it to Europe, it wasn't Ashkenazi, it was Sephardic as well. It was the Iberian Peninsula and Italy and Rome, which Judeans have been there for 2,000 years. This is not a European construct we're dealing with. This is as ancient as it gets, and so the Jew has to have a maternal tracing to the mother, according to these teachings, and a Levi or a Kohen or a priest actually is traced back from the father within the Jewish people today. But I disagree greatly with your suggestion that the convert is a construct of a rabbinic Jew or Torah. I'll just pull up a few verses over here. It says, if a convert dwells with you in the land, do not offend him, even with words. And maybe you'll say that's not an actual Israelite, that's just a convert. Let's read a few more verses. Leviticus 25:35. If your fellow man grows poor, as soon as his fortune begins to fail, you must support him, even though he's a convert or even a non-Israelite. So you see there's a difference. There's not just talking about a non-Israelite dwelling with you. A convert is someone who actually gets grafted in. Leviticus 16:29, both the native and the convert who dwells amongst you. Two different people, the people who live in the land and the actual converts. And then Leviticus 19:34, you will treat the convert who dwells with you like any other citizen. You will love him like yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
So convert right there is just a stranger. I know you putting the word convert there.
Well, how come they use the word convert and stranger together in the same verse?
I understand what you're saying, but I understand what you're saying about that word convert. It all depends on the texts that you read, because even if you go to the Septuagint, which is older than the Masoretic Hebrew text that came in the 9th century AD, the word convert is not there. Also, you was mentioning about Mordecai inside the book of Esther and how he was known as Yahudim. He was only known as Yahudim geopolitically because he was a part of the southern kingdom of Israel. Remember, the northern kingdom was dispersed 722 BCE under the Syrian captivity, 586 BCE. Now you got the southern kingdom, which was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, and little snippets here of the other tribes, but mainly the southern kingdom. Either you was from the tribe of Judah, or you was a citizen in the southern kingdom, and you was known as Yahudim. And you did see people go through a state of naturalization. Remember, we a kingdom. See, what religion has done is have people believe that they can just convert to the Torah. No, the Torah is the constitution of the body politic Israel. So just as we have, a United States, if a Mexican wants to be a U.S. citizen, he has to go through the green card process, swearing on the Bible, citizenship, all that. That's what the stranger is going to be. The stranger is going to have to go through some form of a naturalization process if we setting up a sovereign autonomy. This is not religion. So my whole point there, and another thing when you're talking about the Babylonian Talmud that was developed in Babylon, if you read the 50th chapter in Ezekiel, Amalek, remnants of the Edomites also went into the Babylonian captivity. And what we're saying is that the Edomites developed. Now, we don't say the Edomites, the so-called white, by the way, that's one West Israelites. But what I am saying is that the Edomites during the time of the Babylonian captivity developed the Babylonian captivity, and then in Tobias they developed the Jerusalem Talmud, and then from there it went up into Europe. What I'm saying, the social construct of today is, say that one more time, Rabbi.
It didn't go into Europe for 1,000 years later. The house
I know. I know. Yes, I know that. And what I'm saying is, when you go into the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, it says that an ambassador went up into Europe and did this. This was Edom. Edom is the one that took the Talmud up there and started to fuse with different European nations. What I'm saying is that there's no escape. The Sanhedrin has demonstrated racism. Look what they did to the Israelites in Ethiopia.
This goes back to the two separate things. Let's just talk about the history, then we'll talk about the Sanhedrin today. Okay, these are two totally separate realities. Just to answer you with one more thing, in Deuteronomy 19:4, it says, according to the rule of the Passover sacrifice and according to this law, so shall he do it. There shall be one law for you, both for the convert. I mean, I'm looking at source after source.
But the word, I know, Rabbi, but what translation are you coming from out of? Because you put in the word convert there. The word is stranger. So when you say convert, it's as if they're converting to a religion. No, the law of the stranger, or the one that is sojourning, that's of another nation, is going to have to go through a naturalization process. If we have a government, and if that government is ran by the way of Torah Constitution in our land, strangers from other nations can't just come in and say, oh, we're soldiering. No, you're going to have to go to our governmental structure and go through a naturalization process. We're taking that as religion. That word you keep using, convert, with
So I'm showing
translation.
you from the verses that it's showing two different levels. You could live in the land and dwell in the land, or you could be a level up and actually convert. So you don't have to keep the laws to live in the land. It's clear in the verses. And yet there is a status of someone who joins and is now keeping the laws in the land, and they become equalized to the name Israel. The name Israel is put on them, and anyone who points a finger and separates them from that would be what I would say sinning against what seems scriptural commandments over here.
So you believe that other nations can live in our land without holding the laws, and they can hold their own laws?
Absolutely.
Which the Most High.
Well, yeah, I just showed a verse before that says they can do that if they don't keep idols. So if someone is not serving idols, he doesn't have to keep the commandments. He doesn't have to sit in a booth on the holiday of Sukkot, but he absolutely can't keep his idols. But he's not considered a convert. He would be a dweller in the land.
Okay. The reason why I ask, because even when you look in the book of Joshua and different places, you constantly see the Most High tell us don't even have that stuff in our land. And I understand if soldiers come in and out and just pass through the land, that's cool. But even when you look at the 60th chapter of Isaiah, all the way to the 66th chapter, it says that we're going to create a autonomistic government by the way of Torah, and we're going to come in and we're going to destroy all these idols when we come in, and we're going to clean out the land. So I don't see people from other nations that have these different ideologies or their powers being amongst us, because that was the reason why we fell from having people like this around us that were sneering to our people to lure us away from the Torah. But my thing is, I wanted to ask you so the people can get the translation. What translation Torah you coming from out of, Rabbi?
Well, in general, I go from the Hebrew word and I reverse engineer it, but I use the Sefaria app, Sefaria. It's got the whole entire written in
is the word convert in there, or are you? Is their translation? Is the word convert there?
Sure.
Okay, they did. So the word. So what other word can be used besides convert? Because I got the Hebrew English Tanakh here, and I looked up them verses. It doesn't use the word convert in the translation. What other word does it use?
Most of the translations we have that come from the Bible, the New Testament, and the churches, hundreds of thousands of translations. It's interesting you mentioned the Septuagint, which was done by 70 rabbinic rabbis at the time when they were converts. But actually, if you look behind the scenes, which is Googleable, the miracle of that day was each of the 70 rabbis wrote the same interpretation in a way that didn't even give the Greeks the full depth of the Torah. And the miracle was that they all hid a lot of information from the Greeks in that translation. And the fact that 70 different men came out with the same translation that was still hiding information from them was a miracle that they were all in sync that way. But we see even converts from the time of Moses, bringing the Egyptians out with them into the desert all throughout the scriptures. But that could be a point of argument. There are people smarter than me who are Bible scholars could argue with you on the nuances. But as far as you're saying today, how Israel's acting, there's Egyptian obelisks in Israel right now in the Jerusalem. We got idols going on in here, so there's no question the land's got to get cleansed, and the prophecies that you're speaking about that we have yet to see flourish in the land. I would hope in the next few years, 3-4 years, we'll start to see maybe a new government with a representative from each house of Israel.
You question that though, Rabbi, when you say like they got Jerusalem homosexual week going on in Jerusalem? I mean, they got the idols. You could just be, it's like very liberal, like the United States. But we see when it talks about the return of Israel, that none of that would be going on. Like all that would be destroyed. So you understand?
We don't believe it's an overnight process. The Messianic redemption. It actually is a process. As the prophecies say, the redemption comes like the sun rising. When the sun rises, it's like ray by ray by ray. And then all of a sudden, boom, the sun's here. So now that you have the return to the land, now this place is called Israel. There's airports here, there's roads, representatives from the tribes coming back. This is all a formula for a revolution of love that's being planted now by the Most High. So I'm not taking the situation today and saying, well, this is what it is. This is what it's going to be for the next 50, 60 years. Absolutely not. We're going to form a unity block of members from the house of Israel, and we're going to strengthen ourselves. We're going to unite ourselves. We're not going to allow conflict to come into our way, and we're going to cleanse this land and make it a righteous place that actually people will look at it and see the light of Israel coming off of it. But it's a deep and interesting process of how this is all unfolding and how the land came back into reality and all these things. But I will never sit here and defend a secular, rulership over this land that creates a Eurocentric powerhouse that filters who can and can't come here based on ethnicity. We're gonna change that, and this should be a place of Torah and light. And we need a Messiah. We need a king, like you said. This is all part of the prophecies. It didn't come yet, so I don't think the prophecies are over. I think we're in the middle of the most amazing movie ever, and we should fill our spirit up, as the prophets say, with repentance and return to the Lord, and get our way out of here.
Thank you for your response, Rabbi. Do you have any last comments, Dr. Bainzadeh?
Shalom. My connection got dropped. Yeah, what I would like to say is that we have to pay great respect to the Nabi. The Nabi, the prophets who are the spokesperson for the Most High. Because in Jeremiah 1, verse 11 through, I think, 17, the Most High clearly state that there is a people coming from the north. And north of Israel is what? Is Europe. And it used the term Ra'ah, which means broken myopic perception. And so these people are coming with a broken myopic perception of reality, right? Which means these people are going to be subjective to, or going to be predisposed to, or have a proclivity to distort reality. And it says those people will come in on the land of Israel, but the whole of the African Edenic people, right? Colonize and usurp and retailer the identity and the doctrine of who Israel is. I didn't say that. The prophet says that. So if we are talking about truth now, we have to then identify who are these people. I'm not even pointing fingers. Who are these people? Secondly, when we go to Psalms 83, we see there's a prophecy pertaining to the international confederacy against the children of Israel. Edom, the Assyrian, Ishmael, all of these people, the Canaanites, were mentioned. We know that Edom interbred with Ishmael and the Canaanite, and they form a confederacy against the children of Israel. My question is, during the time of Yeshua, it is said that the Herodian took charge over the kingship and the priesthood of the children of Israel, right? Could it be that those Edomites and that alliance conspired with the families of the north mentioned in Jeremiah chapter 1 to usurp the identity of the children of Israel? Because that is what Psalms 83 says. We also notice that in the book of Kings, that a people were brought into the land to usurp our identity. And this is even before what is called the Khazar conversion, right? We go a little bit further. We go to Deuteronomy 32, verse 21, where the Most High said, because Israel went against the laws and statutes, he's going to make a people that is not a people make us, he's going to cause a people that is not a people to make us jealous, right? And that term that is used for this people who is not a people is Nabal Achasim, which mean they said it mean a vile nation. My question is again, who are these people? We have to identify who these people are. Then, when you go into Genesis 15, verse 13, if I'm correct, it says the seed of Abraham will go into captivity for 400 years, and they will afflict them. I don't know no other people on this planet that can attest to that except those who were taken from the African continent and brought into the Americas. We have to stand by the words of the prophet. There's no other people who can say that happened to them. And again, if we're talking about truth and reconciliation, we have to put all these facts on the table. We have to discuss this truth. And finally, you know, Rabbi mentioned those from China and who claim that they are Hebrews from China and Afghanistan. Well, we go right back to Jeremiah chapter 1. All of those regions, Eurasia is the region that Jeremiah was speaking of. We know that in Turkestan and all these places, you have a fusion between Asian or Chinese-looking Mongolians, and you have a fusion between the Turkish people. So could it be that these people that you're speaking of are a part of those people who were converted, that retain aspect of Hebrew culture by way of conversion? We have to look at the words of the prophet. History, you use history to substantiate or validate prophecy. It have to come to pass. So if our fathers didn't prognosticate about this or give us forewarning, then I could see. But we were warned that another people would usurp our identity. Perhaps the reason why we are being discriminated against
He'll be back in. He'll be back in. But yeah, he'll be back in a second. But to close it out, I would like to do you have any last words, Robbie? First, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming. You know what I'm saying? Because it take a lot of, you know how I be on some of these Israelite platforms. You know how I go down, Rabbi, and you've been around us for a long time. Oh, he's back in. So, when Dr. Bainzy finished, and I want you to close out, Rabbi, some last final words, and then I'm gonna close out, and then the host of the show will end it with a song and whatever he wants to say. Dr. Bainzy, you have finished.
So I'm saying perhaps it might just be that there are people who are proclaiming to be a people are not the people. We have to look at all this evidence. You can do DNA studies. The bones are still there. There are a number of means to determine who is who. And if we're going to be truthful, let's put it all on the line. That is what, at the end of the day, that's what matters. That's what we have to do. And that's my message. And thanks for having me on, Nasik. Rabbi, thank you for having the guts to come on this platform and subject yourself to these questions and declaration.
Appreciate it, my
these
brother.
patak.
You're a very wise man, and I appreciate the thought you put into your thinking. And I think you're always right that the prophets is what's going to guide the reality of the future. At the same time, the scripture warns us about false prophets. So I'm always cautious about men who try to prophesize on the prophecies. Like, here was an ancient prophecy, so I'm going to give prophecy what that prophecy was referring to. So that's like, I'm always a little cautious about that. But, what you were saying before is like what some people suggest. You're suggesting so many different waves of conversions. Like, the Israelites aren't a real people like 7 times over in the Book of the Kings, and then the Edomians, and then the Khazars in the year 900, but the Romans and the Greeks. There's like 6 or 7 conversions that we're referencing of how impure the house of Israel is. So for me, it just that's not any of that's really real, because my reality, how I view reality, is we had Ezra and Nehemiah return back, purify the bloodlines, establish the priests. even that got corrupted and impure, and it was sold to Greeks and the Romans, the priesthood in the Temple of Jerusalem. And then we have the miracle of Hanukkah, where the Maccabees come and cleanse the temple and reestablish again the kosher line of the priests and the Torah and the teachings, which led to Judah the Prince. And then we have the period of the Tanaim and the Amoraim, which lasted 400 to 500 years, where they were redacting the laws. Then we had the Gaonim in Babylon till the year 1000. And then we had the Sephardic and the Ashkenazi houses of Torah study. So for me, I'm not looking at genetics. I'm looking at the Torah. What kept the Torah alive today? What preserved it? The reality around it. If it wasn't for these Jewish people in these 2,000-year exile, there wouldn't be a Torah, there wouldn't be a Bible, there would still be pagan nations around the whole entire world. So I think that everyone's playing their role now, and prophecy will unfold. The land will cleanse, will get righteous. The real Israelites will return home. The Messiah will identify who the real Israelites are, and there will be truth in the world. And until then, we just have to be absolutely sure we're not getting manipulated by agendas of people who want to keep us in slave mentality.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you very much. It's been an honor for having you come on, Rabbi Harry Rozenberg. We have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. One more thing. How's your project going along, Harry, Rabbi? How's your project going?
I appreciate the project is going well, and I'm in the same school of thought of Prince Asiel of blessed memory, who I trained under and studied under. I got guidance from, and I hold him to be one of the wisest men I've ever met in my entire life, filled with the spirit and the love and beautiful things. And the project I'm working on basically is to create a system to decentralize. We teach in the Talmud, ancient Jewish teaching, that the only difference between the days of the Messiah and not the days of the Messiah in practicality is just that the yoke of the nations is off of our shoulders. There's no more foreign rulership over us. That's what's going to be the main differentiation. So I think that with all of us together, it's just an easy network. If we formed, we can easily take away power from the banks and the wars in the world that are oppressing us and do it overnight. So my mission as far as creating a unity and a mapping of the House of Israel, that we should all have a platform where we could start to make our own electricity, our own food systems, our own water filtration systems, stop eating poisons, consuming these things that are creating companies and wealth that's putting us into repetitive societal slavery, that we can get out. So as far as that's going, and my blessing I got from Prince Asiel, blessed memory, I think the projects are going great. I have a lot of patience because this is stuff I wanted to see happen 10, 12 years ago. But the Most High took thousands of years to get to this point of the exile, and I have complete faith in the Most High. It'll unfold in its proper time.
Good. Listen, real quick, Mighty Hebrew.
Yes.
Again, Rabbi, I want to thank you for taking your time and being here on the platform. This was a great conversation, something that I know we should have had a very long time ago. And I've seen, your presence before. You've really been trying to advocate a change, and I think this is the conversation that we need to have and continue to work towards figuring out how we can, bridge this gap. And it looks like you're the person that's really out here trying to make that happen, because again, like Brother Ben was saying, thank you for being here, because it takes a lot to be able to stand here and face what's really going on, and you've done a great job in presenting the information and responding accordingly in a fashion that helps everybody understand a little bit clearer. And Mighty Hebrew, Prince Shah, I thank you again. I'm gonna leave it to you. I got the song queued up, and so I'm gonna let you end it out from there.
Yes. Giving all praise and honor to Yahweh, the supreme intellect of the universe, the supreme reality of our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Again, I want to thank Rabbi Harry Rozenberg for coming on, Dr. Bain Zadig for coming on, and just thank, True Flex TV, or excuse me, True Flex Networks for having us on here, because originally we was just going to do it on Facebook, but Lord Mikhail was like, no, we got Harry Rozenberg come, we're going to do it real professionally, and that's how it should be done. And again, I definitely thank you. And as I was telling the audience, everything is not a debate. Everything is not a debate. Some things we have to talk out, iron out. Like the brother said, this discussion and many more after this is going to come. We just laying down the foundation. We've been arguing on social media so long that we're not really getting anything accomplished. Me and Rabbi Harry Rozenberg, we will be collaborating. We've talked briefly on certain private matters where we will be working together throughout East Africa and all the way to Northeastern Africa. So the work is at hand. The work is at hand. And again, Rabbi, I want to thank you for coming. Hallelujah. May the Most High bless you and your family sevenfold for righteousness' sake. Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi.
I mean, we'll be worthy to see the vision of our ancestors flourish in the land and not settle for anything less.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. With the closing out, we're going to close out with that song, right, off my album, Journey to the Dark Side of the Moon. That's called Lost Tribes. Since the title is Talk, Lost Israelite Tribes in Africa, I got a song called Lost Tribes. Let's close out with that. Oh,
wait,
go ahead, Rabbi.
My friend's making a documentary called We Were Never Lost about seasons about the African Israelites and trying to tell the Jewish people these guys were never lost. And this is going to be the biggest documentary to hit the Jewish people. You can follow them on Instagram now. The filmmakers actually got arrested in Nigeria last year because the government thought they were trying to come and arouse the Jewish kingdom to awaken. But it's called We Were Never Lost. So the term lost tribes will hopefully be a thing of the past. Everyone's going to be found.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You never know, I might be on that documentary.
There we go.
Hallelujah. Close us out, Lord Adonai.
Lost tribes of Israel feel pain. Come on, devil's lies on the rocks without shame. What? Who's to blame? But us, we trust one. And trust the devil and uplift your hard wall. Lost tribes of Israel feel pain. Fuck em. Devil's lies on the rocks without shame. Who's to blame? But us, we trust one. And trust the devil and uplift your hard wall. A mighty power frees minds. A Gentile scholars lies to shower to the wise that was blinded. A strange land prophesied. Lost tribes became Falasha. Apocalypse of Abraham, 32:16, 400 years coming in ships and chains being whipped. Ezekiel 1949, placed in the pit, dying in feces and piss. Sitting next to skeletons, 350 million Paris in the middle passage. Some sisters gave birth to your bastards, creating monogamous trios from the poison of demonic semen. Being raped by perverted beasts and heat with a thought of jungle fever. A liar wall sent them devils evil. I see the shadow caught deceiver in the image of a non-people. Speaking the tongue off balance with the rhythm off beat. From the heart that the wolves eat. February the 14th, they feast in ceremonies and tights filling the rush of Israelite blood and Ghana who they first crushed. With the help of Hamites, praising Muhammad as their prophet, ruptured the dynasty of Zah, placing the mind in the genie bottle only for a time. 1969, first Israelites shine in the Mona, kingdom of YAH, resurrect the lost tribes of Israel feel pain. Come on, devil's lies on the rocks without shame. What? Who's to blame? But us, we trust one. Trust the devil and uplift your hard wall. Lost tribes of Israel feel pain. Devil's lies on the rocks without shame. Who's to blame? But us, we trust one. And trust the devil and uplift your hard wall. My mental plane, range celestial terrain, power range, glass stainless, ascended master in the rain. Return, rearrange your animated matrix. No escaping, ship shaping, incarnated awakening. Numerian Texas label secret to those stargazing for the fate of Jacob. Climb ladder, Saturn to the 12th planet. Clouds magnetic, Yah's eye vision, lightning striking. Eden Viking with force of Dami. Lotus my llama, controlling karma. My thorns Mars, master with law as a rule savior. My behavior permeates dark matter in four chambers. Earthbound and physical. Myself, I'm a stranger, really an angel. Trap prolonged from anger. Stargating, use 6-point triangles to astral project my temple to elements of wise intelligence to a land of never end. Losing 5 senses to senselessness. Vision and vision's appearance of Sirius. Aligning every pyramid, the minds of builders of sugar rocks and psychogoths. Allahayim development has been arrested since New Atlantis. Yah bless my vocab. It's beyond letterman. The king is solo, controlling the global from electromagnetic oval of immortals with techniques. One with Levitical priests, sacrifice truth instead of beast meat. Secret science, initiate gods and right knowledge. The son of Enoch,
Hallelujah. Blessed be the rock, Yahweh Ahaya. What my Ayasha, we rise higher. Itana, Matazoyam, Bain Yasha Allah. Torah we follow to Makuba, take Zion to the land of promise of our forefathers. Abba, YAH, shining like spectrums, universal cosmic sound wave objects move from stillness. Endless being, break the dream. Chanting Hashema Cree on Asoline. Born in Kabbalah trees, the garden of Eden. We Elohim, watch Adam and Eve manifest new better she. Lost tribes of Israel feel pain. Come on, devil's lies on the rocks without shame. What? Who's to blame? But us, we trust one. And trust the devil and uplift your hard wall. Lost tribes of Israel feel pain. Fuck em. Devil's lies on the rocks without shame. Who's to blame? But us, we trust one. And trust the devil and uplift your hard wall.